I jolt awake, reality blurring around the edges. The mysterious voice still echoes in my mind, but the searing pain in my arm screams that this is no dream. It hits me like a freight train. I have actually returned. I'm back in the past, fresh from the beating by the bullies at Belder's Academy. But this time, history will not repeat itself, because the man waking up in this broken body is the future's deadliest Dark Swordsman. To understand this miracle, we must witness his end. The scene shifts to the final apocalypse. A young man gasps for air, clutching his sword as the world burns around him. Desperation claws at his throat. We made it this far, he thinks. If we just kill this one monster, humanity wins. But hope is a fragile thing. A sudden, unseen attack tears through his defenses. Blood sprays from a gaping wound in his chest. He stares down, mind unable to process the ruin of his own body. The realization crashes down. That was a lethal blow. He sees his reflection fading in a pool of blood, dying as a failure who accomplished absolutely nothing. Darkness takes him, or so he thought. It all began when the Liquidator descended a calamity that erased an entire continent. To fight this extinction event, the world assembled an ultimate party of heroes. There was Brian Miller, the human fortress, who survived a direct meteor impact. Bella Albright, the great sage, with Mana rivaling an army division. They were joined by the divine archer, Jacob Bloomfield, the dragon slayer, and the invincible sword saint, Amy White, the strongest warrior in history. These were the legends, the gods among men. And then, there were the extras, the so-called support unit. Soldier Gray Lee knew the harsh truth. They weren't heroes. They were meat shields, sacrificial pawns to buy the legends a few seconds of time. He stares at the elites, the golden graduates of the World Union Academy. The gap between their power and his existence isn't just a valley. It is an endless abyss. The battle erupts. The heroes unleash a bombardment of ultimate skills, hitting the Liquidator head-on. Lying in the dirt, Gray questions his very existence. Does it even matter if the support unit breathes or dies? They are nothing here. He laments the years of blood and sweat he poured into training. It was all meaningless. Above him, the Sword Saint lands a catastrophic hit, but the monster, it barely flinches. It inspects its scratch, then smirks at the heroine. Is that it? It seems to say. The Liquidator decides playtime is over. It unleashes a cataclysmic shockwave, an area of effect nuke that crushes every legendary hero in a single heartbeat. The beast floats victoriously over the pile of fallen legends. Gray watches from the ground, paralyzed by true terror. The enemy turns, its eyes mocking. Was I just playing around? Gray's mind shatters. One hit. It took one hit to end the world's strongest team. The monster was never trying until now. Victory was a lie. There is 0% chance of survival. His body finally betrays him, collapsing into the dirt. What is happening? Why am I still awake? He wonders, pain fading into numbness. Suddenly, a voice from the void pierces his consciousness. I have finally found you. A second voice booms, summoning his soul. Step forward, wielder of the great power. Gray snaps, his eyes open in a desolate limbo. Is this the afterlife? It's barren, cold, but something feels wrong. Who sits upon that throne? He calls out. The shadowy sovereign reveals a shocking truth. Gray is not defeated. His fatal wounds have already vanished. The young soldier stares in silence, mind racing. He checks his chest, no blood. Did you heal me? Gray asks. The entity laughs. No. That was your own power. Gray is stunned. My power? The figure explains that Gray possesses a dormant ability so chaotic, it defies analysis. But one thing is certain. If he can control it, his potential eclipses even the Liquidator. Does that mean? Gray starts, hope kindling in his chest. Can we win? The cloaked being offers no guarantees. But the monster must die. The shadow reaches out, its hand phasing into Gray's heart. Go now, it commands. I lend you my strength. The world spins. Gray jolts awake back on the scorched battlefield, the screams of war returning. The voice lingers. This power cannot be seen by mortal eyes. Gray stands up. He understands now. His aura shifts, causing the Liquidator to freeze. Boom! Gray vanishes and reappears, landing a devastating blow. The Liquidator stumbles back, genuine shock on its alien face. A human is still standing, and he is strong. Looks like that hurt, Gray taunts. He raises his fists, energy crackling. My power exceeds yours now. The Liquidator narrows its eyes. Don't get cocky, insect. The creature catches Gray's next strike with a single hand. Gray gasps, the defense is impenetrable. The Liquidator smirks. Congratulations, you actually forced me to use full power. But Gray isn't done. A massive, dark silhouette rises behind him like a guardian demon. His true power begins to manifest. The Liquidator recoils as its invincible barrier starts to fracture. What is that? it shrieks. Are you even human? They charge. Two forces of nature collide in a violent explosion. The impact creates a shockwave that hurls the Liquidator backward across the wasteland. The monster rises, dusting itself off in disbelief. I ask again. Gray. Are you human? Gray glares, the shadow dancing around him. Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. The Liquidator stares in shock, unable to believe his prey is still breathing. But Gray stands firm, warning the beast that underestimating his resilience will be a fatal mistake. He inhales a ragged breath, stealing his resolve. Gray declares with burning determination that he will defeat this monster, no matter how many lifetimes it takes. With a roar, he charges, his blade singing through the air. The strike lands true, and he curses the monster. But the Liquidator's flesh begins to ripple and twist in a horrifying transformation. The enemy sheds his previous guise, evolving into a nightmare of pure power, and begins charging a devastating attack. Under the pale glow of the moon, the creature sneers that time has run out. Gray looks up in horror as the sky is instantly swallowed by an unnatural, suffocating darkness. Facing the abyss, Gray challenges the beast, shouting, "So what?" He throws a desperate punch, but his fist meets an impenetrable wall. He recoils, stunned by the absolute defense. The Liquidator laughs, revealing that the true nightmare has only just begun. In this domain of true twilight, nothing can scratch him. The monster commands Gray to cease his futile struggle and witness the end. "Look at the stars," he mocks. "Aren't they beautiful?" he asks cruelly. Gray gazes upward, only to see a catastrophic pillar of energy crashing down from the heavens. The creature vanishes from the blast zone just as the attack impacts. The earth groans, and a titanic crater obliterates the landscape in an instant. The Liquidator gloats that recovery from total annihilation is impossible. But suddenly, his triumph turns to confusion as a new, ancient power manifests. A colossal clock materializes from thin air, humming with arcane energy. A mysterious voice echoes, declaring that this gathered power is finally enough to turn back the tide. Recognition flashes in the enemy's eyes. He screams the name of the intruder in terror, Kronos. "Can you hear me, Wielder?" Kronos roars, preparing to burn his very essence. "I will use every ounce of my strength to send you back to the past." The Liquidator howls in fury. "This is all I can do," Kronos whispers, his voice fading. As the great gears of the clock begin to spin, he entrusts the fate of the world to Gray's hands. Gray snaps his eyes open. The battlefield is gone. Instead, he is lying on soft grass. He bolts upright, his heart pounding, and gasps, "Where am I?" He scans his surroundings, mind racing. He turns his head and freezes. It is Renato Village, his hometown. But this is impossible. Renato was wiped off the map 15 years ago. The god's final words echo in his mind. The realization hits him like a lightning bolt. The regression actually worked. He is in the past. A sharp throb radiates from his bandaged arm, pulling him from his thoughts. He stares at the injury, memories flooding back. This was the era when he was weak, the days when Belder and his gang tormented him relentlessly. He clenches his fist. He refuses to be a victim again. He knows he can beat them, but he also remembers how strong they seemed back then. He sighs heavily, wondering if defeating the Liquidator was just a fever dream. Deciding to play it safe, he resolves to deal with the bullies only after he regains his strength. But fate has a sense of humor. As he navigates the forest path, he walks straight into a nightmare. Belder and his cronies are blocking the way. The tyrant smirks, claiming he has been hunting for Gray everywhere. "You've caused me a lot of trouble," Belder sneers. He tosses a practice sword onto the dirt at Gray's feet. "Pick it up," he commands. Gray stares at him, offering a silent challenge. Belder barks at him to stop playing the fool. He demands a training battle, his voice dripping with malice. Gray declines, pointing to his bandages and explaining his arm hasn't healed. The bully laughs it off, assuring him the blade is dull and perfectly safe. Gray pushes back, arguing that a dull blade is still a heavy iron bar. One wrong hit to a vital point, and safe becomes deadly. Belder slams his own weapon into the earth, shouting for Gray to shut his mouth. "Do you think you have a choice?" Belder sneers, advancing menacingly. "If you hate swords that much, I'll just beat you unarmed." Gray watches him come, thinking sarcastically that this hardly qualifies as a training battle anymore. A memory surfaces a military doctor explaining that his lack of sword talent stemmed from a childhood injury. He realizes this moment, right here, was the origin of his life as a failure. One of the lackeys lunges, but Gray's body reacts on instinct, slipping past the blow with ease. He pauses, surprised by his own movement. Belder charges next, swinging wild. Gray sidesteps effortlessly, noting that the strikes look agonizingly slow. His feet dance across the dirt. A realization dawns on him. It's not just luck. Belder screams in frustration. "Why can't I hit you?" The blade whistles inches from his nose. Gray finally understands. The enemies aren't slow. Asterisk he times is the one who has become faster. The lackeys whisper in shock, terrified. He's moving like a completely different person. One stammers. Gray crouches, eyeing the sword on the ground. He may have the body of a novice, but his mind still holds the battle experience of a veteran. Belder brings his sword down in a crushing vertical arc. Gray snatches the weapon up and parries the strike with a metallic clang. He almost laughs. Can I even fight an amateur like this? He wonders. Then he remembers the years of torture these cowards put him through. A cold smirk curls Gray's lips. With a single, sharp motion, he disarms Belder, sending the weapon flying. Things aren't the same as you remember. The bully trembles, mocking that Gray doesn't even know how to take a hit. Gray's eyes narrow. Don't worry, you just taught me exactly what to do. He grips the hilt with both hands, his aura shifting. As you said, as long as the blade is dull, it's a safe way to teach a lesson. Belder's eyes widen as a blur of steel flashes past his vision. The impact floors him instantly. Belder collapses, staring blankly ahead, unable to comprehend the monster he just woke up. Gray Lee stands dominant over his fallen opponent while 3 others watch from the shadows. A thought crosses his mind regarding the weapon in his hand. He inspects the blade and confirms it is completely dull. A chilling realization follows. If this edge had been sharp, Belder would not just be defeated, he would be dead. Gray turns his attention back to his opponent. With a movement too fast to track, he neutralizes the threat with a single swing. The heavy blow sends Belder crashing into the dirt. Gray decides this dull sword suits him just fine. He looks down at the whimpering man and asks why he is screaming like that. He remarks that someone claimed a blunt sword was safe. With a cold stare, Gray asks if Belder wasn't the very person who spoke those words. Back in reality, Belder is on his knees, humiliated. He screams at his frozen companions, demanding they stop staring and attack the enemy immediately. But the men hesitate, noting that Gray's aura has become terrifyingly strong. They decide to use numbers to their advantage and rush him from behind all at once. Gray calmly asks if they really want another round of pain. Desperate, Belder screams for his friends to stop, but it is too late. As they charge, Gray sighs. He intended to let this slide, but they have forced his hand. The scene shifts to the forest, where 4 men now kneel in the dirt, utterly defeated. Gray stands before the broken group. He demands to know if they belong to the renowned Syria swordsmanship dojo. One of the battered men confirms it, admitting they haven't attended lately because they arrogantly believed they were already strong enough. Gray processes this information. He concludes that while he shouldn't expect much quality from them, their dojo might still serve his purpose. He commands them to introduce him to the dojo, as entry is by referral only. Belder panics, begging him to ask someone else. Terrified of what his master will say, Gray simply raises the heavy iron sword once more. He asks if they would prefer to continue the beating instead. Belder immediately changes his tune, agreeing to take him. He runs ahead, pointing the way. The group navigates through the vibrant streets of the bustling city. As they walk, Belder asks why he cares about a dojo. Gray counters by asking if the place holds a recommendation slot for the academy. Belder confirms he heard rumors of such a thing. Gray nods. That recommendation is the only reason he is here. One of the lackeys mutters that Gray seems powerful enough already. Why would a monster like him need the academy? Gray's expression darkens. He comments softly that it would be nice if his current strength was actually enough to survive. A flashback hits him. He remembers a nightmare where not even the strongest group in the world could scratch the Liquidator. Even when Gray used his hidden power, it was meaningless against a serious foe. Gray wonders with a heavy heart. Just how strong does he need to become to slaughter that monstrosity? But hope is not lost. He knows there are clues to victory. In that final moment, he felt it a fleeting second where he truly controlled the dark power. He recalls the key to that control. It was the swordsmanship taught by the legendary swordmaster, the techniques of Amy White. Gray concludes that if he had trained under her conditions earlier, the outcome of that apocalypse might have changed. That must be why Kronos sent him back to this time. The scene shifts to the dojo. Syria, the master, questions her students with a voice like ice. She asks if they used her sacred teachings to intimidate a civilian, only to end up humiliated and defeated. The instructor of the Syria swordsmanship dojo glares at them with fury. Belder tries to stammer a justification, claiming it was merely a training battle. Excuses are useless. With a movement quicker than the eye, Syria strikes all 4 men simultaneously. Belder's companions are stunned by the impact. She demands to know who gave them permission to make excuses, asking if her strike was also just training. With her blade point hovering inches from his face, Syria delivers her verdict. She orders him to leave and never return. She informs the group that they are stripped of their status as students effective immediately. Terrified, they agree and flee the premises in shame. Syria turns to Gray, her demeanor shifting. She apologizes sincerely for the trouble her disgraced former students caused him. Gray kneels respectfully. He tells her not to worry and thanks her. She shifts the topic, mentioning she heard he seeks a recommendation for the academy. Gray confirms this is his goal. As an apology for the trouble, Syria says she wants to write the letter. However, She states she must first verify if he is worthy. Gray accepts the challenge. Syria takes her stance and offers Gray the first move. She tells him to attack whenever he is ready. He does not hesitate. Gray lunges forward with a rapid barrage of strikes. The dojo echoes with the sound of steel clashing in a high-speed exchange. Syria's eyes narrow. She carefully dissects every single one of his movements. She notes his swordsmanship is terrifyingly practical for his age. It feels as if he has already survived countless battlefields. Gray's blade meets her guard. Syria sidesteps a lethal swing. She states calmly that Belder and the others never stood a chance against a fighter of this caliber. She observes that his style appears self-taught. Yet, beneath the roughness, his foundation mirrors the elite swordsmanship taught at the academy. The instructor continues to block his onslaught. She admits he has immense talent, though his technique is raw. She defines him as a true diamond in the rough. Then, she decides playtime is over. Syria braces herself, channeling her energy for a devastating downward strike. Gray senses the danger and prepares to block. The two swords collide with a shockwave of force. Syria presses the attack, driving Gray back across the hall. But as the clash continues, she finds the situation bizarre. The instructor cannot understand why he doesn't collapse. He is keeping up with her movements. She questions herself. Why is she fighting with all her might, when this was only supposed to be a test? Syria couldn't shake the ominous sensation in her chest. She asked herself the terrifying question, why did this mere boy strike such fear into her heart? Suddenly, Gray launched himself into the air. He brought his blade down with a crushing blow. Syria sidestepped the strike effortlessly, noting that despite her dread, that attack was nothing but a reckless, wild swing. But that strike left him wide open. Syria's eyes narrowed. He had finally exposed his fatal weakness. She lunged forward to punish the mistake. She declared that this spar ended right now. The instructor moved with absolute determination, but her confidence shattered in an instant. Syria froze, confused. On the ground lay the splintered remains of her wooden sword. Gray stared at his hands, eyes wide. It was that sensation again. The dormant power within him was still awake. A split second earlier, a shockwave had slammed into Syria. Explosive energy had detonated from Gray's leg upon impact. She rushed over, panic in her voice, asking if he was all right. Gray grimaced. His body was screaming in protest against the overload. Stumbling to his feet, he lied and said everything was fine. His legs trembled under his own weight. He realized the hard way. That power was too dangerous to use carelessly. The young man hesitated, wrestling with his thoughts. Should he confess the truth about what just happened? Syria studied him with deep suspicion, but Gray stayed silent. She would never believe a power he couldn't even control himself. He simply shrugged, claiming he got a little too excited during training. Syria gripped the hilt of her shattered weapon. There was no way a simple accident caused this level of destruction, and she knew deep down, Gray was fully aware of it too. Gray asked if something was wrong, trying to break the tension. Realizing he wouldn't talk, Syria sighed and shifted topics, asking about his desire for an academy recommendation. He nodded firmly. He had heard rumors that she held the authority to grant one. Syria admitted she could easily send him to the Royal Fencing Academy, the kingdom's finest. However, she stated coldly that she would not recommend him for that school. The instructor was blunt. He wasn't built for that place. Gray lowered his head. He tightened his grip on his sword, painfully aware of his lack of strength. But Syria wasn't finished. There was another place he truly belonged. She proposed the World Union Academy. It wasn't just the best in the kingdom. It was the apex institution of the entire world. The young man's eyes widened in shock at the name. That was the legendary ground where the Sword Saint and history's greatest heroes were forged. Could a nobody like him really walk those halls? He shook his head. It felt completely impossible. Syria cut through his thoughts. He already knew his body wasn't made for swordsmanship. At the Royal Academy, technique might save him, but the World Union Academy was a different beast entirely. She looked at him sharply, wondering how he mastered such high-level techniques with such a frail constitution. Gray didn't argue. That academy was a den of monsters. With his current physique, he would be crushed before he even began. Then Syria smirked. Why was he giving up so soon? She reminded him that the entrance exam was still 9 months away. The young man balked. Only 9 months? She admitted the timeline was tight, but she locked eyes with him and asked for his trust. Then came the real question. Was he prepared to endure pure hell for the next 9 months? Gray looked at his trembling hand. He didn't want to suffer, but slowly, his hand curled into a fist. He looked up and declared he would do it. The young man bowed, asking for her guidance. Syria smiled. That was the answer she wanted. She cracked her knuckles, the sound echoing ominously. Gray flinched at the gesture. With a sadistic grin, she announced that his intense training started right now. Days blurred into weeks. Gray endured a nightmare of rigorous drills and was forced to consume strange, bitter meals to build his strength. The young man pushed past his limits with burning determination. 8 months later, The transformation was undeniable. Gray stood tall, his body now defined by lean, powerful muscle. Syria inspected his growth. The frail boy was gone, replaced by a warrior with a hardened physique. She nodded with satisfaction. She had nothing left to teach him. It was time for him to walk his own path with confidence. He protested. The exam was still a month away, but Syria insisted he needed to acclimatize to the city early. She tossed him a heavy pouch of coins for travel and food. Gray hesitated. Leaving a month early felt wrong, and he refused to accept her money. He narrowed his eyes, accusing her of trying to chase him out of the village. Syria just scoffed, telling him he was overthinking things as usual. She casually mentioned a rumor about an ogre nest found nearby. The village was practically defenseless. Gray confirmed he had heard the same news, but Syria waved it off, claiming the royal capital would send help. It wasn't their problem to worry about. She smiled brightly, urging him to focus solely on his exam and leave without a care. But Gray knew she was lying. No help was coming. He remembered the tragic future. His master would stand alone, against the ogre, only to fall before the village was wiped out. He kept his expression neutral and simply nodded. The young man accepted the pouch, bowing deeply to thank her. With a faint, knowing smile, he said his farewells. He turned to leave. Syria watched his figure disappear into the distance. She whispered a silent prayer for his success. The sun set, and the heavy shroud of night covered the land. Deep in the forest, the trees bore the scars of a massive beast. Syria knelt to analyze the tracks. The scouts were right. The threat was already here. She stalks the trail, eyes locked on the fresh tracks. Her destination is agonizingly close. Suddenly, a presence looms above her. She freezes as a voice demands to know exactly where she thinks she is going. Perched lazily on a high tree branch, Gray calls out to his teacher with a casual grin. Syria's eyes widen in genuine shock to find her disciple waiting in ambush. She demands to know why he isn't en route to the academy. He leaps down, landing with a heavy thud, and throws the question right back at her, reminding her that the royal knights were supposed to purge this filth, not her. Syria's expression darkens as she explains the complication. The knights couldn't come. A sudden emergency tied their hands, so she took the blade of justice into her own, lone grasp. She declares with supreme confidence that her power is more than sufficient based on the scout's intel. Her instructor voice kicks in as she breaks down the threat level. The boss is merely an elite ogre, and the nest contains a swarm of 40 to 50 beasts. She admits the sheer quantity of minions will be a nuisance, but nothing she can't handle. Gray knows the truth hidden beneath the surface. An elite ogre isn't terrifying for its brawn, but for its brain, its terrifying leadership capabilities. To fight alone while surrounded by a coordinated army is a death sentence. The young man is certain of one grim reality. If his master steps into that ravine alone, she will not return, and the village will be drowned in a river of blood. He has witnessed this apocalyptic future with his own eyes. Desperate to change fate, Gray begs her to let him join the fray. Syria refuses flatly, her pride insisting she is enough. He pushes back hard, claiming he needs the visceral taste of real combat. He looks her in the eye and asks if she truly sees him as a burden. A knowing smile softens her face. She admits that burden is the wrong word, considering she hasn't been able to defeat him in the dojo for some time now. But Syria's tone turns grave. A sparring match is not war. In a monster nest that spawned from nowhere, chaos is the only constant. She creates a wall between them, insisting that for a suicide mission like this, he needs to wait until his blade is tempered by more experience. Gray realizes she is immovable. Words won't work. He sighs, his demeanor shifting as he announces that he has a different solution. Syria asks what he means. His voice turns cold as he declares he will fight her right here to stop her, and then he will slaughter the ogres himself. The air crackles with tension as master and student face off. Gray raises his blade, leveling it directly at the woman who taught him everything. Syria holds his gaze, then breaks into a defeated smile. She yields, but on one non-negotiable condition. Her master's command is simple: come back alive. Gray accepts the vow instantly. He warns his master not to let her guard down either, and with their pact sealed, they plunge into the shadowed forest together. The duo arrives at the edge of a gaping ravine, the lair of the beasts sprawling below them. Syria scoffs at the monster's arrogance, noting they built a nest in a dead end with absolutely no escape route. Gray points out the double-edged sword. It means the hunters can't escape either. Caution is key when dealing with intelligent prey. Syria nods, scanning the battlefield. She frowns, noting the chieftain is missing from the open. He must be lurking in the command tent. She proposes they cull the herd before the boss emerges. Strategizing quickly, she orders Gray to flank and assassinate the visible enemies on his side, one by one. His master takes the opposite flank. Gray acknowledges the pincer attack, and the plan is set in motion. Syria gives the signal. They descend like lightning into the camp. An ogre spins around, sensing the killing intent. But Syria is already upon it, blade drawn. Steel flashes. She drops the first beast with a single, surgical strike, but the thud of the body alerts a nearby sentry. The roar of alarm shatters the silence. The entire horde wakes up and rushes the invaders. Gray draws his steel and dives headfirst into the sea of monsters. He decapitates the first attacker in a spray of blood. Gray becomes a whirlwind of death, cutting down every beast that dares to charge him. Syria matches his pace, carving a bloody path through the ranks. Master and disciple fight in perfect harmony, a symphony of violence felling the enemy. Silence returns. They stand victorious amidst a mountain of corpses. Syria praises his lethal efficiency, but he cuts her off. Stay sharp, the battle isn't over. A chill runs down Gray's spine as he realizes something is terribly wrong. The ogres were too fragile, too weak. His master could have wiped them out alone without breaking a sweat. Which means the real threat, the true nightmare, is still waiting in that tent. From the pitch-black darkness, two glowing eyes stare back at them. A suffocating pressure explodes from the shadows. Gray feels an overwhelming aura that defies logic coming from the tent. He spins to Syria, screaming for her to run. Before she can process the confusion, he shoves her violently, demanding they flee this instant. Sensing his genuine terror, Syria agrees. They turn to sprint from the camp, Gray leading the retreat with a face full of dread. Boom! An elite ogre crashes down from the sky, slamming into the earth and blocking their only exit. Syria raises her sword. She identifies the target as the elite ogre, the supposed chieftain. But Gray screams at the top of his lungs, "That is not the chief." A colossal shadow eclipses the light. The true horror steps out from the tent, letting loose a roar that shakes the very heavens. The lesser ogres freeze in reverence. Syria stares up, paralyzed. This aura, this is something far beyond a mere elite. Gray names the nightmare. An ogre general. The true king of the nest has revealed himself. The monster sits upon a throne of stone, looking down at the insects who dared to enter its domain. Syria realizes this is a foe they cannot defeat, but she steels her heart. With a desperate war cry, the master charges forward. There is no retreat, they must carve a bloody path to survival. Syria charges into the fray. Her blade screams against the ogre general's massive weapon, sparks flying as she calculates her next strike. Her master weaves through the counterattack and lands a devastating slash. But as the blood sprays, Syria's eyes widen in horror. The gaping wound on the ogre general isn't bleeding out, it is knitting itself back together in seconds. Gray realizes the truth instantly. The general's roar is a command spell, supercharging every beast nearby. Syria is barely surviving against a single empowered monster. Despite the odds, Gray drives his blade home, silencing one of the frenzied beasts for good. He turns to his master, his voice steady amidst the chaos. "Watch my back, just buy me a few seconds," Syria yells back, demanding to know his plan. The young man's eyes lock onto the target with cold precision. There is only one choice. I have to slaughter the commander, controlling them all. Gray Lee deflects a crushing blow from an elite ogre. These monsters are evolving. They are actually trying to flank him. Annoyed, he unleashes a spinning slash, clearing the immediate threat. But another beast charges in, a massive axe raised high. Gray focuses on the swarm, but disaster strikes. His steel shatters against the monster's iron-hard skin. A standard blade cannot withstand their buffed defense. Without missing a beat, he draws a fresh sword and parries the next lethal strike. He had a spare, but he knows it is living on borrowed time. Jacob Bloomfield sees the struggle and hurls his own weapon through the chaos. Gray snatches the blade from the air. Thanks. Now wielding dual swords, he faces the sea of enemies. It won't be enough for the whole army, but for the general? It has to be. He grips both blades tight and declares that this ends now. With twin blades flashing, the young man launches himself at the ogre general. He carves through a minion, but is forced to cross his swords against a heavy axe. The impact shudders through his bones, knocking him back. Recovering instantly, he vaults over the horde, aiming a death blow from the sky. A mysterious figure observes from the shadows. Suddenly, the ogre general roars again, and Gray watches in shock as the monster's muscles bulge and twist. A second evolution. Their power spikes terrifyingly. Gray blocks a strike, but the sheer force sends him skidding backward. The creature sneers, human-like intelligence in its eyes. "Did you think I was a mindless beast?" Steel rings out as they clash again. Gray grits his teeth, fighting off another monster. He shoves through the blockade, screaming for the fodder to get out of his way. He becomes a whirlwind of steel, carving a path toward the boss. "I don't have time to waste on trash like you, but the numbers are too great." An ogre grapples him from behind. Before he can break free, an axe slams squarely into his chest. Pain explodes in his ribs. He realizes their strategy. They are throwing their bodies at him just to chip away at his weapon's durability. A fist creates a shockwave. Gray manages to block, but the metal screams and shatters into dust under the overwhelming force. The blow knocks the wind from his lungs. He hits the dirt, gasping, struggling to find his footing. He is down to his final blade, one sword against an immortal general and an army of evolved monsters. His past life memories haunt him. Logically, he knows he cannot win. But from the depths of despair, a burning resolve ignites. He rises, gripping his last hope against the army. Gray screams over the roar of battle. "Master, run while I hold them back." Syria offers a sad, faint smile. She turns to face an incoming ogre, her stance firm. "You know I can't do that. Are you going to throw your life away?" he yells. Syria shakes her head, her eyes fierce. "I am done running." Gray watches, helpless. The weight of his regression crashes down. Did he come back in time just to die here against the Liquidator's pawns? He swings desperately at an encroaching beast. Is this it? Is this where my second chance ends? Snap. His final sword breaks. He stares at the broken hilt in his trembling hand. No, it's not over yet. A memory surfaces. The forbidden power he wielded in the future. As long as he can awaken that power, the fight continues. He shuts out the chaos. He doesn't need a sword. He needs to recall the sensation, the feeling of absolute destruction from that time. Clutching the useless hilt, he focuses. He closes his eyes, seeking the abyss within. Darkness tears open. A single, ominous eye snaps open in the void. Shadowy energy erupts, coalescing into a new blade of pure power in his hand. "Gray!" Syria cries out. He turns, the dark energy swirling. With a confident smile, he whispers, "Everything is fine now." He blurs forward, the shadow blade shears through the ogres like paper. He meets the general's axe and shatters it into oblivion. The general stares at its broken weapon, fear finally dawning in its eyes. Syria watches, unable to comprehend the monster he has become. With the commander broken, Syria faces the remnants. "You feel lighter now," she murmurs. "You actually gave me trouble before." The warrior cuts them down effortlessly. Without the general's roar to bind them, they are nothing. Standing amidst the fallen monsters, Gray exhales. We somehow made it. "Sorry about your sword," he mutters. Syria shakes her head, taking his hand gently. "You saved my life. But that power, what was?" Before the question lands, Gray's eyes roll back. He collapses into her arms. Syria's scream pierces the silence. Gray's consciousness drifts into a suffocating, unknown void. He stands alone in the endless darkness, facing a colossal structure sealed by a heavy, chained door. Without warning, the ancient chains shatter into dust. The heavy door creaks open, revealing the abyss inside, leaving Gray to question what reality he has stumbled into. A malevolent eye opens within the shadows, pulsing with chaotic energy. Gray realizes instantly if he crosses this threshold, unimaginable power will be his. He hesitates, the temptation warring with his instincts. Then, he takes a sharp step back. A horrifying vision assaults his mind, a skeletal monstrosity consuming his very soul. He chooses to retreat. He cannot explain why, but his gut screams that this path leads only to ruin. Opening that door in his current state would mean eternal defeat. A mysterious voice echoes through the void. A wise decision. Gray's eyes snap open in the real world. He wakes up gasping for air, cold sweat clinging to his skin. Syria is immediately at his side, her voice gentle as she tells him the nightmare is over. Disoriented, he asks for his location. Syria explains he is in the village infirmary, having been comatose for 5 full days. Gray assumes he simply slept due to exhaustion, but Syria shakes her head. Pushing too hard doesn't even begin to describe the lethal limit he surpassed. She asks for a status report on his body. Gray attempts to move, only to realize his right arm is completely dead weight. He stares at it, wondering if he will ever hold a sword again. Strange, glowing markings twist around the bandages on his paralyzed limb, pulsating with faint energy. Syria notices his struggle and confirms his fear he cannot channel a single ounce of strength into the arm. She delivers the grim diagnosis. The bones were pulverized and the damage is severe. It won't heal anytime soon. Gray is shocked by the extent of the injury, yet terrified by the fact that he feels absolutely no pain. Syria reveals they had to use a high-grade magic potion just to save the limb from amputation. Gray's eyes widen. Magic potions cost a fortune. Syria cuts off his panic, explaining that the village chief donated the treasure personally to save him. Gray is baffled. Why would the leader of the village sacrifice such a priceless item for a nobody like him? "What are you talking about?" Syria asks, her expression serious. She declares the truth that leaves him speechless. "Gray, you are this village's hero." Suddenly, the village chief bursts into the infirmary, breathless and shouting Gray's name. Gray tries to bow and thank him for the potion, but the chief stops him immediately. "No," the old man insists. "We are the ones who owe you everything." The chief explains the magnitude of the threat. It was an ogre general, a calamitous monster that even entire city armies fail to contain. If Gray hadn't achieved the impossible, the village would be ash. The chief adds grimly that without him, neither Saria, the infirmary, nor the villagers would be breathing right now. The two warriors sit in silence, letting the weight of the chief's gratitude sink in. Gray tries to remain humble, calling it an exaggeration. The chief refuses to back down, insisting Gray acknowledges his own strength. Gray looks away, his mind drifting to a darker timeline. A flash of memory strikes him, a village consumed by infernal flames. The chief is right. In the world before his regression, this village was destined to be wiped off the map by that very ogre attack. The chief shifts gears, asking if Gray still intends to take the entrance exam for the prestigious World Union Academy. Gray listens intently, the mention of the academy snapping him back to reality. Panic sets in. He fought the ogre a week before the exams. He slept for 5 days. That means only 2 days remain before the deadline. It is a 3-day march on foot. Impossible. But with a horse, he could make it in one. He swallows his pride and asks the chief to lend him a mount. The chief grins, he was counting on it. The village's finest horse has already been saddled and is waiting outside. Saria adds a dry remark. If he hadn't woken up today, they were fully prepared to strap his sleeping body to the horse and send him anyway. Gray pushes the door open. The blinding sunlight hits his face, and as his eyes adjust, he freezes. The entire village is waiting for him. Cheers erupt like a wave. They wish him victory in the exams, their voices demanding that he pass for their sake. Amidst the gratitude, one villager steps forward, holding out a heavy gift for their savior. Gray holds the small, dense pouch, confused. The man explains it is a contribution from every family in the village. They know the academy registration fee is exorbitant. Gray looks at the hopeful faces around him, his heart swelling. He smiles, accepting their support with genuine gratitude. Standing by the horse, he admits to Saria that the pressure is immense. Failing after all this would be unbearable. Saria scoffs at his doubt. None of those elite candidates have slain an ogre general, she reminds him. You are in a league of your own. Gray glances at his limp right arm. Saria asks sharply, does the left one still work? Gray clenches his good fist, feeling the power within. It does. Then that is more than enough, she declares. You won't even need that mysterious power to crush them. Still, Gray worries. The entrance exam is brutal, and a one-armed swordsman is an easy target for disqualification. Saria is unshakable. She assures him the examiners are masters, they aren't blind to true skill. You will pass, she says, leaving no room for argument. Thank you, Gray whispers. With her belief in him, failure is no longer an option. As he gallops away, he reflects on the miracle behind him. The village that burned in his past life now stands tall. The future is not set in stone, it is clay in his hands. With one final look at the home he saved, Gray turns toward the horizon. His legend begins now. Chest heaving, he skids to a halt, gratitude flooding his veins for making the deadline. He scans the imposing landscape before him. Then, his eyes lock onto a titan of stone dominating the horizon. The legendary World Union Academy rises like a fortress of the gods. Above the grand arena, birds circle ominously, as if waiting for a feast. A booming announcement shatters the silence. Exam tickets are being distributed immediately. No one is to leave the central arena. A nervous candidate whispers that everyone here is prey. Out of this ocean of hopefuls, barely 20 will survive the culling. Another voice trembles, noting the pass rate fluctuates wildly. Some years 50 ascend, other years, only a single survivor remains. Suddenly, a woman of commanding aura steps onto the podium. Her voice cuts through the murmurs. She signals the beginning of the selection, instructing the crowd to grasp the paper manifesting before their very eyes. With a casual snap of her fingers, reality bends. Sheets of paper materialize from thin air, hovering in front of every single candidate. Gray Lee watches with intensity as his destiny solidifies into a slip of paper within his grasp. The number 513 burns on the page, alongside the words, Swordsmanship Course. The woman confirms the distribution is complete. The official's voice turns cold. She warns them against confusion. Only a number and a track are listed. That is the Academy's way. A faint, enigmatic smile touches her lips. She declares that the World Union Academy is blind to the trivialities of the outside world. Age, gender, nationality, status. None of it matters here. The crowd listens, entranced. She drives the point home. There are no exceptions to this law. In this arena, even their names are meaningless dust. She points a condemning finger at the mass of students. To the Academy, their identities are worth absolutely nothing. Only those who prove their worth, who earn the right to cross the bridge of glory, will be granted the privilege of a name. Until then, they are ghosts. Gray Lee stares at his ticket, a frown creasing his brow. The system feels flawed. He has been assigned the swordsmanship track, yet he stands there empty-handed, having left his blade behind. The woman drops a bombshell. She didn't use data. She assigned courses based solely on their appearance and aura. She dares anyone who thinks she made a mistake to step forward. Disbelief ripples through the crowd. Is this a joke? How could she determine the fate of thousands with a mere glance? Paranoia sets in. Some whisper of secret background checks. Others suspect high-level mind-reading magic at play. The official ignores the murmurs, noting with satisfaction that no hands are raised. The sorting was perfect. Now, the countdown to the exams begins. New text burns onto Graylee's ticket. His trial is set for the opening day, 11 o'clock in the morning. His heart sinks. The first day? It's the worst possible scenario. He desperately needed more time for his injured arm to heal. The woman's voice turns steely. The practical exam is a single, brutal phase. Tardiness means instant elimination. She delivers the final blow. There will be no rescheduling, no mercy for personal tragedies. Graylee clutches his arm, silently praying for a miracle recovery overnight. The scene fades, transitioning to the tension of the following morning outside the arena. Reality is cruel. His arm throbs with the same dull ache as yesterday. He has no choice but to fight through the pain. An official barks orders, calling the next victim to the gate. Graylee takes a deep breath, forcing down the rising tide of pessimism. He tests his range of motion. The left arm is battle-ready. The right is barely responsive. Strategy is his only weapon now. He decides to use the waiting time to dissect the examiner's combat style and hunt for a weakness. His eyes sharpen like a hawk's. In the arena, the examiner stands like a statue, arrogantly allowing the challenger the first strike. The candidate roars, ready to prove himself. Blade raised high, the candidate charges. A strike meant to kill. But the examiner intercepts it with terrifying ease. Steel clashes against steel. The examiner halts the momentum cold. But the candidate isn't done yet, pouring every ounce of desperation into the blade. It's useless. The examiner blocks the enhanced force without flinching. The candidate's terrified reflection is visible on the instructor's polished steel. The tide turns instantly. The examiner pushes back, a fluid deflection that breaks the challenger's posture, opening him up for the kill. With a single, dismissive blow, the examiner slams the candidate into the dirt. The verdict is delivered. The exam is over. Broken, the young man retrieves his weapon and limps away. Graylee absorbs every frame of the defeat. The failure hangs heavy in the air. Then, the call comes. Number 513. Graylee steps forward, confirming his readiness for war. The ritual repeats. The examiner lowers his guard, inviting the first move. Graylee accepts the challenge. He grips the practice sword, the weight familiar yet painful. Memories surface. His master's voice echoes in his mind. The sword is not swung by the arms alone. Her teachings flood his senses. Channel the kinetic energy, from the earth, through the core, into the blade. He ignores the screaming nerves in his right arm. He recruits every other muscle fiber in his body to compensate. Graylee uncoils, launching a vicious sideways slash. But the execution is flawed. Without the stability of his arm, the trajectory wavers. It's a sloppy strike. Yet, the examiner barely reacts in time. Graylee's eyes widen as he sees the instructor's blade inches from his own. Time seems to slow. A realization strikes him like lightning. The examiner's movements, they are sluggish. Graylee presses the attack. The examiner has raw power, yes, but compared to the monster who trained Gray, this speed is pathetic. A spark of realization ignites in the young man's eyes. He doesn't need brute strength. He has times her times swordsmanship. With that revelation, his resolve hardens. Graylee shifts his stance and unleashes a storm of rapid-fire strikes. The examiner is forced on the defensive, struggling to deflect the barrage. Gray realizes the truth. This opponent isn't invincible. His master's words echo in his mind. You will pass. Steel clashes against steel with earth-shattering force. Graylee presses the attack, suffocating the examiner with pressure. He can actually win this. The duel explodes into a blur of violent exchanges. Gray has completely dissected the examiner's rhythm, and the instructor's blade begins to falter under the relentless assault. But experience counts for something. The examiner unleashes a heavy counter, forcing Gray back with raw power. Gray assesses the situation instantly. The physical gap is massive, and winning with one hand is a tall order. Yet, the enemy's movements are getting sloppy. It's time to gamble everything. Gray taunts the examiner, daring him to make a move. The examiner takes the bait, charging in with a massive, wide swing. Gray smirks. He sees the fatal opening clearly. He weaves past the blow, perfectly positioned. In the world of swordsmanship, a wide swing is a death sentence. The examiner's blade hits nothing but air and dirt. Gray ghosts behind his opponent. The power difference means nothing now. He raises his blade for the finishing strike at the exposed back. Stop! A command thunders through the arena. Graylee's blade freezes mere inches from the examiner's spine. Confusion washes over him. Is it over? Already? The official makes the cold announcement. The time limit has expired. The verdict is handed down. A draw. The young man swallows the bitter pill of reality. A draw means he didn't pass. His knuckles turn white as he grips his sword. Still, he exhales slowly, accepting that he left everything on the battlefield. As he descends the stairs, the weight of failure settles in. If he can't even beat a mere examiner, the path ahead is treacherous. He resolves to return next year, once his arm is fully healed. Gray turns back to the arena and bows in silent gratitude. 1 week later, the imposing silhouette of the Grand Academy looms. Inside meeting room 53, the fate of the candidates is being decided. An elder councilman breaks the silence, demanding an evaluation of the latest batch of warriors. A weary board member sighs, complaining about the workload and suggesting they split the duties next year. The process is too draining, but another voice cuts through the lethargy, arguing that laziness is no excuse to overlook true talent. The chairman takes control, steering the focus back to the students rather than the system. It's time to review the swordsmanship course. Holographic results flicker into the air. The question hangs heavy in the room. Who made the cut? An instructor clarifies the brutal standard. Anyone who defeated the examiner passed. The rest are judged by the quality of their struggle against the clock. Aside from the victors, 3 numbers shone brighter than the rest. Candidates 5, 217, and 793. A counselor proposes ruthless efficiency, accept only the elite, discard the rest. Silence fills the room, sealing the decision. The elder nods solemnly. The list for the swordsmanship course is locked and confirmed. Suddenly, a sharp voice pierces the air. The red-haired woman speaks up. What about candidate number 513? The examiner who fought Gray Lee lets out a knowing chuckle. Another member scoffs, referring to Gray as that little guy. He admits the boy looked close to winning, but relying on cheap tricks to survive isn't the mark of a true warrior. Another instructor chimes in, acknowledging the technique was flawless, but there was a fatal flaw. He lacked raw power. From the first clash to the last second, he was fighting a losing battle against physics. The chairman waves his hand dismissively. Then he is rejected. The board members share satisfied smiles, ready to move on. The red-haired woman's eyes narrow. She scolds them all, remarking that if so many experts watched and saw nothing, perhaps their collective observation is worthless. The following day, the city buzzes with anticipation beneath the shadow of the great clock tower. Gray Lee clutches his ticket, the number 513, stamped clearly on the paper. The announcement booms over the crowd. Only 6 candidates have ascended. Gray braces his heart for the judgment. Suddenly, tickets begin to burst into magical flames. Numbers 5 and 217 ignite. Then 432, 515, 753, and 925. The announcer's voice rings out with finality. These are the 6 chosen warriors for the swordsmanship course. The winners are ordered to cross the bridge and seal their destiny before the sun sets. Gray Lee stands frozen, holding his cold, unlit ticket, while cheers erupt around him. It's undeniable now, he has failed. But then, the speakers crackle to life again. Divine Eye Special Admission. Candidate number 513 is called. His ticket suddenly blazes with light. A gasp ripples through the crowd as eyes lock onto the glowing ticket. Gray stares down, stunned. Did he actually pass? Whispers explode among the spectators. 2 men exchange shocked glances. The legendary Divine Eye admission has happened again. Gray Lee blinks in confusion. A backdoor entrant? The whispers around him are venomous. A woman sneers that the Academy's standards have truly fallen if they are letting trash like him in. Gray frowns. Him? Cheating his way in? The accusation hangs in the air like a bad joke. He has 0 connections. Unless his master pulled some strings behind his back? Suddenly, a gravelly voice cuts through the gossip. An elder snaps at the students for insulting the sacred Divine Eye admission. You ignorant brats, the old man barks. The Divine Eye is the highest honor. For a century, it has birthed the greatest heroes this world has ever seen. But the crowd just laughs. Okay, Grandpa, one student mocks. Maybe back in the Stone Age, that honor is ancient history now. Another voice chimes in, listing the recent divine failures like a grocery list of disappointments. Amy White, Bella Albright, Jacob Bloomfield. Trash, every single one of them. The student spits. It is common knowledge among the elites. The Divine Eye is broken. Holographic displays flicker to life, showing the faces of the disgraced alumni, Amy, Bella, and Jacob Bloomfield, looking pathetic. Gray's eyes widen. Failures? Those 3 were the vanguard against the catastrophic Liquidator. If they are considered trash, what will these people think when they see his time's name? A loudspeaker crackles, cutting his thoughts short. Entrance ceremony, commencing in 30 minutes. All students, report to the central square immediately. The time for talk is over. The students suit up, donning the crisp, intimidating uniforms of the World Union Academy. Gray blends into the sea of freshmen, drifting toward the gathering point. Murmurs of confusion ripple through the crowd. Is this a joke? One student asks. The massive square is completely empty. No stage, no chairs, nothing. A lone man steps forward, looking casual. Sorry about the wait, he chuckles, scratching his head. Had a little mix-up with the logistics. He waves at two students standing nearby. Excuse me, kids, could you scoot over? I need to put the staircase right there. He steps onto the exact spot, nodding with satisfaction. Perfect. The students just stare at him, baffled. Is this guy crazy? All right, let's do this. The man slams his palm against the pavement. Asterisk. Boom. Asterisk. A massive transmutation circle blazes into existence beneath his feet. The earth groans and tears apart. Stone and marble erupt from the ground, reshaping instantly. Within seconds, a magnificent grand hall with sweeping staircases towers over them. The man dusts off his hands like he just built a sandcastle. Sorry again for the delay. Please, take any seat you like. Jaws drop. Silence reigns. Was that teleportation? A student stammers, their brain unable to process the scale of the magic. Moving an entire building instantly? It is a feat that defies the laws of physics. Gray calmly takes a seat. Classic Academy showboating. They just wanted to flex their budget. A smirk plays on his lips. It is definitely theatrical. But as he scans the vast arena, Gray frowns. Wait, there are thousands of seats here. For only 30 past students? A girl next to him raises an eyebrow. Are you serious? Do you really not know how this works? Gray scratches his cheek, embarrassed. Sorry. I have lived under a rock. Only studied the sword my whole life. The girl sighs. Fine, I will explain. This is the Times World Union Times Academy, she says, her voice dropping. The elite gather from every corner of the globe. She points upward. And here they come. Gray looks up, and his breath catches. The sky is no longer blue. It is choked with an armada of steel and scales. Warships and dragons descend from the heavens. The horizon darkens as a leviathan breaks through the clouds. A flying fortress so massive, it blots out the sun. What in the world is that? Recognition flashes in Gray's eyes. He knows that silhouette. It is the Times Strato Queen *. The legendary flagship he rode during the chaotic days of the Liquidator War. He cannot believe it. They mobilized a strategic superweapon. Just for a school entrance ceremony? The Academy is insane. The Colossus touches down with a heavy thrum, shaking the very earth. This isn't just an arrival. It is a declaration of absolute dominance. Hundreds of elites stream out from the ships. On the podium, the construction mage nods. The stage is finally set. Let the ceremony begin. Cheers erupt, speeches drone on, and the crowd goes wild. The atmosphere is electric. Gray stifles a massive yawn. World-class technology, legendary dragons, and the speeches are still boring as hell. Finally, the announcer's voice booms. Now, inviting the valedictorians. From the swordsmanship department, Leonhardt Appas. A hush falls as Leonhardt ascends the stairs. That is him, someone whispers. The monster who one-shot the examiner during the practicals. They say his skill already rivals the professor's. Leonhardt Appas. The golden boy. Gray's boredom vanishes. His eyes lock onto the prodigy. Leonhardt takes the mic, but he doesn't start his prepared speech. He turns to the faculty. Permission to speak my mind, professors? The dean nods, intrigued. Thank you. Leonhardt turns back to the crowd, his expression icy. I have a formal complaint to lodge against this academy. His gaze sweeps over the freshmen. I speak to my fellow students. Those of us who bled, sweated, and fought to be here, the Times right Times way. He places a hand over his heart. It is the greatest honor of my life to stand among such elite talent. Together, we will become the pillars of humanity. We will sharpen our blades and our minds to protect this world. I looked forward to walking this path of glory with all of you. To reaching the peak together, the atmosphere drops to absolute zero. However, Leonhardt points a finger like a blade. There is a parasite among us. A fraud who does not belong. He turns his glare to the VIP seats. Professor Ariel, I demand an explanation regarding the divine eye admission. Professor Ariel doesn't flinch. Her voice is cool, composed water against his fire. Every student here passed the trials, Mr. Appas. They may not match your raw power yet, but potential takes many forms. She leans forward, her eyes narrowing. But tell me, why does this bother you so much? Leonhardt stepped forward, his voice cutting through the hall like a blade. He made one thing crystal clear. He had no quarrel with those who earned their place through blood, sweat, and the official exams. His target was the anomaly. The student smuggled in through the back door, under the laughable excuse of the professor's divine eye admission. His demand was absolute. Reveal yourself, trash. Strip off that uniform and get out of my academy immediately. The audience erupted into confused murmurs. In the crowd, Gray Lee blinked, wondering why the air was suddenly so heavy with hostility directed at him. A wave of relief washed over Gray Lee. Leon Hart didn't know his face. If he just stayed quiet and blended in, maybe this storm would pass him by. Professor Ariel smiled, amused by the chaos. My, the freshmen are lively this year. But Leon Hart wasn't laughing. I am deadly serious, Professor. Stop polluting this school with backdoor admissions. Her smile didn't waver as she stepped closer. Tell me, Leon, do you honestly believe you are stronger than that boy? The tension spiked instantly. On the stage, under the gaze of the entire academy, the two stood face to face. Leon Hart recoiled, stunned by her audacity. He quickly regained his composure, his arrogance returning twofold. Is that a joke? Of course I am. Are you implying my judgment is wrong? I like that fire in your eyes, the professor purred. Then let's make it interesting. How about a little wager? He scoffed, but she simply nodded, locking him in. Ariel dropped the bomb. I'll bet my entire career, and that boy's admission on this. Gray Lee froze. Why was everything suddenly escalating so fast? Leon Hart narrowed his eyes. You want me to fight the special admission student? She waved her hand dismissively. Heavens no, that would be far too crude. Her next words were a slap in the face. If he fought you seriously, you would be crippled. As an educator, I cannot risk my students' safety against the likes of you. Are you mocking me? Leon growled. I am dead serious, Ariel replied, her eyes cold. Let's make the bet about hunting monsters. It's much safer. She delivered the final insult with a smile. After all, you're much better at fighting mindless beasts than humans, aren't you? Leon gritted his teeth, forced to admit she had done her research. The young genius demanded answers. What exactly are the terms? She shrugged. It is simple. You simply need to defeat the monsters I choose as targets. Round by round, the beasts will evolve into nightmares. The first to fail loses. She raised a finger. If my student loses, I resign, and every special admission gets expelled. But if you lose, Leon Hart. Her eyes glinted dangerously. You will obey my every command. She turned to face him fully. Well, what do you think? But Leon wasn't a fool. I want to know the target monsters first. Even with his supreme confidence, he wasn't about to walk blindly into a trap. He needed to know what he was up against. The professor tapped her chin, pretending to think. The trap was about to be sprung. Let's start with an ogre general. She tilted her head innocently. Is that too easy? The students gasped. An ogre general was a catastrophe-class threat. Gray Lee frowned. Why would she pick something so specific? Meanwhile, Leon Hart slammed his fist onto the podium, the wood cracking under the impact. Are you insane? He roared. An ogre general isn't something a student can solo. Ariel held up a hand. I'm not saying do it today. The deadline is 1 year. Don't give me that, he shot back. If a student could kill a disaster-level monster with just 1 year of training, humanity wouldn't be suffering like this. He demanded a realistic target. In the crowd, Gray Lee watched the debate, his eyes narrowing. Then, a small smirk touched Gray's lips. He finally understood the game. Leon Hart saw through it too. You picked an impossible monster on purpose. You want a stalemate so no one wins. But Ariel had one last card to play. Fine. If it's a draw, you win, Leon. She laid it all out. If that boy fails to kill the ogre general within 1 year, I get fired, and the special students are kicked out. Does that satisfy you? She nodded firmly, closing the net around him. Leon looked at her like she was mad. She was practically handing him the victory. Any more objections? She asked smoothly. Just one. Leon sneered. It cannot be a weakened or injured ogre general. Of course, she agreed instantly. A pristine, full-power monster. With a snap of her fingers, magic swirled. A quill and a glowing contract materialized in the air. The terms are set. Sign, if you have the courage. The young noble stared at the magical parchment floating before him. He read every word. Confident of his victory, he signed his name with a flourish. Do you really think that trash can win? She smiled enigmatically. Who knows? Without another word, the professor turned on her heel and walked away from the podium, leaving him in her dust. The faculty whispered among themselves. Is she using this bet to retire early? She must be. She's past her prime. After all, Gray Lee watched her go, the realization settling in. The bet was official, but a question lingered. Does the ogre general I killed times before times enrolling count toward the deadline? As if hearing his thoughts, Professor Ariel glanced back. Their eyes met. Leon Hart never stood a chance. The bet was won before it even started. She brought a finger to her lips, a secret gesture. Gray Lee sighed. She plays dirty. The drama was cut short. Another professor marched in, slamming a thick book onto the desk. Class is in session. Fundamentals of Magic. I know you're all excited, he barked. But this is the academy. We do not waste a single day. Not even the first one. Ignoring the stunned atmosphere, he launched straight into the lecture. Open your minds. We begin with the flow of mana. He lectures on the invisible force flowing through them, ether, energy that bends to the will of magic circuits. The students hang on every word of the demonstration. Gray Lee breathes a sigh of relief. He can actually follow this. It's the exact same theory drilled into him at the training camp. But then, the cold reality hits him. His biggest problem isn't the lesson. It's the fact that he's stuck in the same class as Leonhardt. He prays his identity as the special admission of the divine eye stays buried. But suddenly, the professor calls out a student, looking a little times 2 times bored. A sharp rebuke cuts through the air. Less than 5 minutes in, and he's already distracted? Gray stammers an apology, completely blindsided. How did he get spotted all the way in the back row? The professor slams the book shut. If he's so confident, surely he can demonstrate? He demands to know if the boy can wield even the most basic magic. Gray Lee attempts a respectful defense. This is the swordsmanship course. Surely, ignorance of magic is forgivable here? But the professor cuts him down instantly. Even if he only ever swings a sword, he must understand the basics to survive, alongside a mage on the battlefield. Gray pauses. The logic mirrors the training camp perfectly. Does that mean the practical application is identical too? He tentatively asks if the spell in question is ether projectile. The professor confirms with a sharp nod. I can do it. Gray replies without hesitation. A wave of relief washes over him. That hellish training camp wasn't for nothing after all. Seizing the moment, the professor turns this into a spectacle. He locks eyes with Leonhardt. Can you cast ether projectile as well? The answer is instant and dripping with confidence. Of course I can. Leonhardt doesn't stop there. He mastered magic and swordsmanship long before enrollment. He questions if it's wise to pit an elite against a nobody. The professor waves off the concern. Do not hold back. With such a basic spell, serious injury is impossible, regardless of the skill gap. Then, he drops the bomb. Young Gray here is this year's Divine Eye admission. Leonhardt freezes, stunned by the revelation. The atmosphere shifts instantly. Every pair of eyes in the room locks onto Gray. Gray is horrified, his cover is blown. The professor merely smirks at the chaos he's caused. Leonhardt's eyes narrow. It's time to teach this upstart a lesson. He declares he'll demonstrate the true level of this academy. He orders Gray to step down to the floor. The showdown is inevitable. Gray Lee steps up, tension radiating from him. The professor issues the final command. On my signal, fire your ether projectiles. Gray braces himself, sweat forming on his brow. He's only studied magic for a few days. Coming out of this unscathed seems like a pipe dream. Combat begins. Leonhardt gathers his power, ready to prove the insurmountable wall between them. Gray Lee focuses every ounce of his energy, cornered and desperate. He decides to unleash everything he has. Boom! A massive sphere of energy erupts from his hand. The sheer scale of the spell leaves both students paralyzed with shock. The dust settles. Gray recovers and assures them he's unharmed. The professor lets out a breath he didn't know he was holding, watching the boy compose himself. The professor surveys the destruction with widening eyes. The protective barrier. It barely contained the impact. He whips around to face Gray Lee. How in the world did he conjure an ether projectile of that magnitude? Gray stares at his own trembling hand. What did I just do? It felt weak, and fundamentally different from what he was used to. A thought crosses his mind. Is the subjugation squad's version of the spell different from the Academy's standard? He asks if he cast the wrong spell entirely. No, the professor confirms, his voice trembling. It was an ether projectile, but the quality was on another dimension. It wasn't just raw energy. It was super compressed ether. Gray blinks, confused. I've never heard of that. The professor reveals the terrifying truth. That is a feat not even the instructors here can easily replicate. Whispers erupt among the classmates. With the divine eye, he belongs in the magic course. But Gray knows their admiration is misplaced. He recalls the subjugation squad's training. All their spells looked like this. To them, he was a failure with zero aptitude. Gray Lee casts the spell again to prove his point. Anyone can do this with enough practice, he insists earnestly. A slow smile spreads across the professor's face. Gray watches, unsettled by the reaction. Suddenly, the older man bursts into maniacal laughter. The outburst leaves Gray completely bewildered. Has the professor lost his mind? The professor steps closer, eyes gleaming. You must transfer to the magic course immediately. His talent for sorcery far eclipses his potential with the sword. But Gray Lee stands his ground. No, he refuses flatly. I've already been told I have no talent for magic. The professor looks ready to tear his hair out. You are a prodigy. Compression at your age is unheard of. Whoever evaluated him was a fool, he begs him to reconsider. The class is stunned into silence. The terrifying, strict professor, praising a student like times this asterisk, the older man points a shaking finger at him. It would be a crime against magic itself if you walked away from this path. Gray suppresses a smile at the absurdity of it all. Yet the phrase ether compression stirs a distant memory. Something from his buried past is resurfacing. A female professor stands before the chalkboard, diving into the history of ancient magic. She explains that in the Dark Ages, humanity remained ignorant of life force, making the casting of magic a nearly impossible feat. But a memory flashes through Gray Lee's mind, a woman from his past explaining the secret, compressing ether and fusing it with ode. She had laughed then, calling the old ways ridiculous. Back in the present, Gray Lee interrupts the lecture to ask Professor Carlos about that very power ode. The older man blinks in confusion, completely baffled by the term. His reaction confirms the terrifying truth. This era has not yet discovered the existence of ode. Gray Lee questions everything he learned in the subjugation squad. The realization hits him like a lightning bolt. All his advanced knowledge belongs to a future that hasn't happened yet. Professor Carlos interrupts his thoughts, begging him to transfer to the magic course. But Gray knows he must guard his secrets. He politely refuses, declaring his heart belongs to the sword. The older man laments the waste of talent, clearly disappointed. However, he sighs in defeat, telling Gray that his door remains open should he ever change his mind. Gray Lee thanks him for the guidance. The professor dismisses him, granting him permission to leave if the class bores him. Carlos admits the lecture is far too basic for someone of Gray's caliber. The other students watch in stunned silence, amazed by the professor's high regard. Gray Lee turns and begins his ascent back to his seat in the amphitheater. Leanhart suddenly whispers, addressing him as Lord Gray. A chill of foreboding runs down the young man's spine. Later, Gray stares at a summons note from Professor Ariel. As he walks down the hallway, he wonders what sparked this sudden meeting. He suspects Professor Carlos might be pulling strings behind the scenes. Finally, he reaches a massive, ornate door. A voice from within calls out his name, inviting him to enter. He announces his presence and steps across the threshold. Without warning, steel flashes. A blade lunges straight for his throat. Gray reacts on pure instinct, drawing his sword. With a lightning-fast motion, he deflects the lethal strike. The attacker pauses, watching him closely. Gray Lee realizes his body moved on its own muscle memory from a lifetime of battle. Sword still raised, he demands answers from the girl now crouching on the floor. He holds his ground, his gaze locked on his assailant. He studies her face for a tense second. The young woman rises, and their eyes meet. A spark of recognition flickers. He has seen her somewhere before. From across the room, Professor Ariel applauds slowly. She remarks with a smile that her eyes did not deceive her after all. A male voice asks if Bella went easy on him. Her form was perfect, yet she was disarmed in an instant. The name strikes a chord. Gray Lee confirms it instantly. She is Bella Albright. The future legendary sorceress stands before him. Professor Ariel turns to her colleagues, asking if they are ready to resign. One of the men laughs nervously, claiming it was merely a joke, but he admits defeat, fishing coins from his pocket. Gray asks what exactly is going on. The woman reveals the truth. They were betting on his survival against the surprise attack. Thanks to his reflexes, she just won a handsome pile of gold. She flicks a gold coin toward him, his cut of the profits. Gray catches it, wondering if this single coin is worth a small fortune. One of the professors turns serious, noting that the outcome was exactly as predicted. The scene shifts to their analysis. The professor observed that during the clash, the boy deliberately avoided using his dominant arm. It was as if he were protecting a limb that couldn't move. The other man asks if he is hiding an injury. The professor shakes his head. It isn't a physical wound, but a psychological scar deep within his soul. The colleague agrees simple pain wouldn't cause such a defensive stance. Gray asks how they could possibly deduce all that. One explains that they wouldn't be elite professors if they missed such details, adding that Ariel had noticed it during the entrance exam. Ariel dismisses the men, stating firmly that she refuses to give up on a student with this much potential. The two men concede the boy has talent, but they leave a parting warning. If that phantom wound doesn't heal, he will fail the academy's admission standards. The man looks Gray in the eye and says, "Keep that in mind." Professor Ariel watches them leave before turning her sharp gaze back to Gray Lee. He waits in silence for the real conversation to begin. Now that they are alone, Ariel declares it is time to discuss magic. A tea set sits ready on the table between them. She reveals she knows about his use of supercompressed ether, and Gray realizes there is no point in feigning ignorance. Ariel explains that Professor Carlos begged to have him transferred to the magic course, but she flatly refused the request. She stirs her tea, analyzing him. In her eyes, the young man is born for the sword, not for casting spells. She observes that he lacks the aptitude for magic compression, nor does he show the signs of a mage's training. The boy lifts the cup to his lips. He decides that with her, honesty is the only way forward. It is exactly as you say. He accepts the premise without hesitation. Desperate for answers, Ariel presses him for the secret behind his technique. She promises absolute secrecy and a reward to match. Her hand rests protectively on Bella's shoulder. This isn't just curiosity. She insists he must reveal the truth for the girl's very survival. Is this for Bella? He catches himself before the title. Sorceresses slips past his lips. The professor sighs, revealing the cruel irony. Bella is a prodigy in magical theory, yet an absolute failure when applying it, no matter how hard she tries. The young woman simply cannot execute the compression technique to create the super compressed ether required. Gray Lee narrows his eyes. The name Bella Albright rings a bell from his memories. History called her a late bloomer. Now, the reason stares him in the face, but Ariel counters with a sharp observation. According to Carlos, you didn't seem to be compressing ether at all. She drops the ultimatum. If Gray helps them, Bella can avoid a terrible fate. She won't be sent to Professor Bradley. The name freezes the air in his lungs. Bradley? He whispers, his voice dropping. Do you mean Professor Varian Bradley? The professor nods, her eyes widening. She senses the recognition in his tone immediately. How could he forget? In his time, that man is a legend of horror, infamous for his countless grotesque human experiments. His research didn't just break laws, it broke the world. Countless lives extinguished. Magical disasters that scarred the land forever. Catastrophes that ruined tens of thousands of souls. Gray Lee knows the truth. Varian Bradley is the single worst magical criminal in history. But a chilling realization strikes him. In this era, the monster hasn't been captured yet. Ariel's voice trembles. If Bella fails to master supercompressed ether by year's end, she faces surgery under his knife. Gray frowns. Isn't that a death sentence? The professor doesn't sugarcoat it. The surgery is a lie. It is nothing more than a pretext for unspeakable experimentation. Though the public remains blind, the rumors are horrifying. Participants don't just recover, they suffer permanent damage or are left completely broken. Bella Albright lowers her head. She knows the risk, but her back is against the wall. Failure means expulsion. She has nowhere left to turn. Professor Ariel's grip tightens. I would rather see her leave the academy, she declares, than let that butcher lay a hand on her. Gray Lee hesitates. His magical understanding is an anomaly from the future. Revealing it now could shatter the timeline and rewrite history. He looks at Bella. Her fists are clenched in silent desperation. The weight of her destiny hangs heavy in the room. A flash of trauma strikes his mind. A sinister silhouette, the pain of his own past, suffering surfacing for a split second. The chaos of a future battle screams in his memories. His resolve hardens. Perhaps, the future he knows. Times deserves times to be burned to the ground. He sets his hand firmly on his cup. The decision is made. I understand the situation. He looks them in the eye. I will teach you. I'll show you the true path to supercompressed ether. Energy swirls into a perfect sphere in his palm. Moments later, they stand in the vast emptiness of the arena. He strikes the chalkboard, breaking down the arcane theory. Once the lesson ends, his expression turns serious. This knowledge stays here. Tell no one. You have my word, Ariel assures him. The magical contract is already sealed. Betrayal would bring consequences far worse than death. Gray turns to his students. Well, what do you make of it? Professor Ariel is stunned. This isn't just a new trick. It is wisdom that far exceeds the limits of her imagination. Bella's eyes shine with awe. It was so structured, so precise, she whispers. It felt like attending a lecture from hundreds of years in the future. She isn't exaggerating. Hearing this theory just advanced magical history by a full century. Gray suppresses a smile. Naturally, this was her times lecture from 10 years in the future. To the primitive present, it looks like a miracle. Ariel rubs her temples, overwhelmed. I can barely process it. She looks to her student. Bella, do you truly believe this is possible? The young genius nods firmly. There is a high probability. Nothing in current magical law contradicts his logic. Her gaze sharpens. But there is only one way to know for sure. We must test it. She lifts a sheet of calculations. Gray, if your words hold true, this spell will change everything. She closes her eyes, gathering her mana. According to the theory, this is my full power. Staff raised. She unleashes the spell. Gray's eyes widen in alarm. Wait, full power? He remembers the devastation she caused in his timeline. A force capable of erasing an entire city. Boom! An enormous torrent of energy explodes outward. In the past, she couldn't control this monster. Bella watches, stunned by her own creation. Get down! Gray roars as the energy dissipates into chaos. He throws up a shield against the shockwave. That power, it would have vaporized them instantly if she hadn't seized control at the very last heartbeat. Whoosh! The inferno swerves, missing him by inches. He is alive. I did it. Bella cheers, ecstatic at her success. But the magic isn't finished. The living fire begins to twist and churn, rising from the ashes. The flames morph into a colossal dragon. Her eyes sparkle with childlike wonder. This is incredible, but the beast is hungry. Her control begins to flicker. My mana. Her strength evaporates instantly. She crumples toward the floor. Gray dashes forward, catching her before she hits the ground. Ariel rushes to their side. It's just magical exhaustion, the professor assures him. Gray looks down at the future legend, sleeping peacefully in his arms. Ariel gazed at the spectacle, her eyes gleaming. Truly magnificent. To cast a spell of that magnitude in mere moments, it defies logic. Deep in slumber, Bella murmured through her dreams. The theory. Incredible. I can weave super-compressed ether with ease now. A satisfied smile graced the professor's lips. Bella had evolved. She would inform Bradley to cancel the procedure personally. The girl no longer needed it. I am relieved, Professor Ariel confessed. We dodged a bullet. But most importantly, her absolute control over magic remains intact. Gray narrowed his eyes, zeroing in on the details. Magical control? Bradley's method is a double-edged sword, she explained gravely. It grants raw power, yes, but by forcibly ripping away the limiter, it shatters one's fine control forever. The realization hit Gray like a physical blow. Asterisk. Was that why? Asterisk. The sorceress from his past. Perhaps that accursed procedure was the reason she eventually lost herself to the magic. Ariel raised the contract, the paper crisp in the air. Thanks to you, Bella has honored her end of the deal. Her expression shifted to one of professional resolve. Now, I shall honor mine. She stepped closer, focused on his injured arm. Magic shimmered into existence. Spectral butterflies materialized from her palm, dancing through the air around the young man. The creatures swarmed his limb, a cascade of living light. The radiant energy released by their wings engulfed him completely, bathing the room in a soft glow. As the light faded, the spell concluded. How does it feel? She asked. Gray focused, willing his fingers to obey. He flexed his hand, eyes widening. I can move it. A rare, genuine smile broke his stoic mask. Thank you, Professor. Even high-grade healing potions failed me, Gray muttered, impressed. Ariel shook her head. Potions only knit flesh. My magic rebuilds the very nerves themselves. Prove it, she challenged, a spark in her eye. Draw your blade. Let us see if you are truly whole. Gray nodded, steeling himself for the test. Asterisk. Manifest. Asterisk. The air warped as he summoned his sword, the familiar weight of the blade settling into his grasp. He observed the steel, his mind sharp. He moved. A flurry of strikes cut the air, swift and precise, but he froze mid-swing. A shadow of doubt crossed his face. Asterisk. Something is off. Asterisk. It drags. It does not move as it once did, he admitted. Ariel sighed, her expression softening. I repaired the nerves, Gray, but magic cannot stitch together a wounded soul. She confirmed his worst fear without hesitation. The young man stood stunned. His soul? Damaged? Academia claims the soul is a myth, a construct of philosophy, Ariel said, her voice dropping. But I know the truth. She raised a hand to cover one eye. With these eyes, she whispered, the atmosphere in the room shifting, I see what others cannot. Your soul is mending, slowly but surely. It will heal, provided you do not push past your limits. Gray stared at his trembling hand, her warning echoing in his mind. Must I cease training? He asked, anxiety spiking. No, she replied calmly. Standard exercise is fine. Just avoid the extremes. Her gaze sharpened, dissecting him. But it begs the question. What manner of swordsmanship tears at the user's very soul? There is a specific style that fuels the blade with the soul, she mused. Tell me, does the name Amy White ring a bell? Gray flinched, his heart skipping a beat. Asterisk Amy White? The Sword Saint? We haven't even met in this timeline yet. Asterisk. Perhaps I am wrong, Ariel said, observing his reaction. Your style echoes hers, yet there is a divergence. Whoever taught you is leagues above even her. Give her a few years, the professor added casually, unaware of the bomb she just dropped. She will reach that summit. Gray stood frozen, unnerved by the professor's frighteningly accurate insight into the future Sword Saint. I learned it back home, he lied, desperate to shift the topic. Can swinging a sword truly scar the soul? Ariel scoffed. Not ordinary swinging. But, she countered, her eyes locking onto his, an ordinary swing does not obliterate an ogre general and vaporize the forest behind it in a single breath. The realization crashed down on him. Asterisk, she knows. Asterisk, she knew about the incident all along. I have you, she smirked, sensing his defeat. Thanks to that display of power, our little bet is practically won. I surveyed the ruin you left behind, she said darkly. Not even the grandest spells of this age could carve such absolute destruction. She pointed a slender finger at his chest. Did you use times it asterisk? Gray stiffened. Can your eye see that too? Everything, she replied. I see it clearly, she whispered, her voice tinged with awe. A cataclysmic power, leaking through the cracks of a chained door. Asterisk, a chained door. Asterisk. The imagery was perfect. Gray realized this was no hunch. She was peering directly into his abyss and seeing the hidden power within. I have witnessed an energy like yours once before, she revealed, her tone turning grave. Though, the texture was different. There are others? Gray asked, urgency bleeding into his voice. People with power like mine? They exist, she nodded. Human or not, I cannot say. But they go by a name. The Annihilators. She saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew the name. Gray's mind raced. Asterisk. Why? Why is that name surfacing in this era already? Asterisk. Glancing at the slumbering Bella, Ariel continued. I am surprised you know it. It is an obscure legend. She shrugged. Then again, you grasped that advanced magical theory instantly. Asterisk. Because my knowledge comes from the future. Asterisk. Gray thought grimly. Asterisk. Though that secret dies with me. Asterisk. Ariel pressed on, her curiosity piqued. How much do you really know about the Annihilator? His expression hardened into steel. Enough to know they are an extinction-level threat to humanity. We must stop them before they rise, Gray declared, his voice cold with resolve. Or silence them forever, at any cost. Ariel acknowledges the peril, but notes that Balian Bradley seems possessed by a mad determination to continue his experiments. Gray cuts to the chase, demanding to know Balian's true role in this nightmare. The professor fixes him with a grim stare. It wasn't just involvement, it was origin. She reveals the terrifying truth. The Liquidator is the very entity Bradley is trying to summon. Shock waves crash through the young man. A human creation? No one had ever whispered that the Liquidator was something summoned by mortal hands. Memories from the previous timeline flood his mind. The Academy's strange behavior back then. They always knew exactly where the Liquidator would strike. The puzzle pieces snap together with chilling clarity. Gray looks at the professor, the realization dawning that the Academy might have been pulling the strings of this summoning all along. Gray declares that this madness must end immediately. Professor Ariel nods in agreement, her expression grave, but she drops a heavy reality check. She lacks the authority to shut down a fellow professor, and the superiors, the true powers that be, won't listen to a word she says. The young man presses for names, demanding to know who these untouchable superiors are. Ariel admits her hands are tied. She cannot speak their names, and only a direct order from the absolute top can halt the experiment. Gray realizes the rot goes deeper than he thought. The Academy's leadership is a tangled web of shadows and secrets, far more complex than he imagined. Then, a thought strikes him. Does the fact that Bradley is essentially a criminal not change the equation? He recalls the horrors of the future illegal experiments conducted in the shadows. He knows the exact coordinates of those atrocities. Gray states firmly that he knows where the lab is hiding. They can catch the bastard red-handed. But the professor shuts it down, warning that breaking into a colleague's lab is a felony in itself. She warns him with lethal seriousness. Without concrete, irrefutable proof, they would be the ones thrown in chains. She asks if he holds any physical evidence right this second. The young man falls silent, defeated by logic. Seeing his hesitation, she suggests they bury the subject for the moment. He clenches his fist, nails digging into his palm. He hates it, but he understands the corner she is backed into. Ariel shifts the atmosphere, turning the topic to his raw potential. She asks if he wants to master his volatile power. Stunned, he asks if she can teach him, but she names another a specialist in unknown forces. The name she drops is legendary. Professor Heathcote Longfellow. Gray's eyes widen. Heathcote Longfellow, the myth, the living legend who trained the Sword Saint herself. Professor Ariel smiles, anticipating his reaction. She offers to set up a private session for the very next day. He accepts, without a heartbeat of hesitation. Mastering this power is his mission, the very reason he infiltrated the Academy. He can hardly believe destiny has handed him such a lead so soon. The sun rises on his first day of training with the legendary Professor Heathcote. Gray runs through the woods, reflecting on the honor of these private lessons. However, confusion sets in. Why are they simply jogging through the forest? They cover miles of dense woodland. Every time Gray's focus drifts, the professor barks a scolding, ordering him to run until his lungs burn and his legs turn to jelly. Heathcote finally reveals the method to the madness. Only when the physical vessel is completely drained can the soul's power truly awaken. Until then, touching a sword is forbidden. As he pushes past his limits, Gray tells himself there is wisdom here. Yet, in the back of his mind, the clock is ticking on Balian's twisted experiments. Doubt creeps in. Is he doing the right thing by training while danger looms? A week flies by. Gray reports back to Professor Ariel. When asked about progress, He admits it's mostly cardio, with a tiny bit of swordplay. But he can't deny the results. Power is surging within him. Ariel offers a knowing smile. That sounds exactly like the Heathcote she knows. Suddenly, a man interrupts, excusing his intrusion to hand a sealed letter to Professor Ariel. She thanks him, the air growing tense. Gray watches her break the seal. As she reads, her expression darkens into silence. The young man asks what's wrong, and she wordlessly hands him the paper. He scans the message. It's from Bailey and Bradley. The letter claims that while Bella awakened a similar power, she failed to compress it properly. The verdict is cruel. Her new ability isn't recognized as super-compressed ether. Therefore, the surgery will proceed as scheduled. Gray crushes the letter in his fist. This is absolute insanity. The professor observes grimly that Bradley is obsessed. He intends to force the surgery, regardless of whether it's medically necessary or not. The young man asks why Bella can't simply refuse. Ariel explains the trap. The contract is ironclad. Unless Bradley himself voids it, she is bound to him. Bella faces a nightmare choice: expulsion or the operating table. Gray refuses to accept this twisted fate. Suddenly, the professor slams her hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. She asks for his help, demanding they expose Bradley. A smirk touches Gray's lips. He reminds her of her own words. Wasn't it too dangerous to act without proof? Professor Ariel replies with fire in her eyes. They will find times the proof. She claims she's putting her faith in him, then corrects herself. Her special eye saw his truth from the very beginning. She finally drops her guard, revealing that her vision confirmed his honesty all along. It just took her time to accept what she saw. He stares at her, realizing she knew everything. The professor turns to him, her resolve hardened to steel. She asks him to lead the way. She declares that together, they will drag Bradley's crimes into the light. Gray reveals the target, a hidden lab in the mountains near Turu village. Recognition flashes in the professor's eyes. She recalls that Bradley has an academy-authorized facility in that exact sector. The young man questions the logic. Why hide illegal experiments in an official lab? Ariel explains the brilliance of the cover. It's the perfect hiding spot. No one suspects the sanctioned ground, allowing him to work undisturbed for years. In this academy, stepping into another mage's territory is strictly forbidden. A professor's lab is their absolute sanctuary. Gray Lee concludes that if they secure the evidence first, the breaking and entering won't matter. But their planning is cut short by a sharp knock on the door. Hearing Bella's voice, the professor invites her inside. The young woman enters, clutching a trembling envelope in her hands. She tells the professor that it has finally arrived. Professor Ariel takes the envelope, her eyes scanning the seal before tearing it open to inspect the contents. Her expression hardens as she reads. She tells the girl to breathe easy. She will handle this nightmare personally. Bella and Gray exchange confused glances, sensing the gravity of the situation. The young woman's voice wavers. Does the professor intend to face Varian Bradley all by herself? Ariel simply responds with a faint, confident smile. She declares that she alone is more than enough to crush this threat. Bella and Gray stare at her, stunned by her unwavering arrogance and strength. But Gray refuses to sit back. He demands to accompany her. Bella steps forward too, gripping her resolve. This is her burden to bear. After all, the professor cuts them off instantly. Varian Bradley is not just a teacher. He is a monster in human skin and highly dangerous. She refuses to lead lambs to the slaughter. But the young man counters immediately. That danger is exactly why she cannot go alone. He insists his power will be an asset, not a liability. Besides, he adds a sly remark. As her student, if she vanishes, he would likely get expelled anyway. Gray pleads for the right to decide their own destinies. The professor stares them down, her gaze sharp behind the reflection of her monocle. She sighs, realizing they would follow her into hell even if she forbade it. Ariel agrees to take them, but she binds them to one absolute condition. No matter how chaotic the battle gets, they must prioritize their own survival above all else. The students nod, accepting her terms. Under the pale glow of the moonlight, the trio moves swiftly toward the mountains, leaving the safety of the academy behind. Hidden within the dense forest, they spy on the secluded laboratory. Gray whispers the question on everyone's mind. Did the atrocities really happen here? Ariel confirms it. They are here for the truth. Gray Lee locks onto the location. This is definitely the place. Bella trusts his judgment, but fear creeps in. Can they really secure the proof without triggering a trap? Professor Ariel outlines the strategy. Varian is attending a conference, leaving the nest unguarded. They will breach through the sidewall to bypass the main defenses. The young woman hesitates. Breaking and entering is a serious crime. Is this really the best path? Ariel scoffs gently. They are already trespassing on forbidden ground. She offers Bella one last chance to turn back before they cross the point of no return. Bella tightens her grip on her staff, eyes hardening. She is going, but she has to ask, why risk everything for someone like her? He cuts her off sharp. She is wrong. Gray explains that stopping these experiments isn't just for her, it is to save the entire world from a looming catastrophe. The girl blinks, confused. What exactly does he mean by the entire world? The professor nods in agreement. This evil must be purged. Ariel assures Bella, they aren't risking their lives solely for her sake, but for justice itself. The order is given. The three of them leap toward the lab. The professor conjures a devastating attack spell, and with a single blow, she obliterates the sidewall. A massive explosion rips through the silence, blasting a gaping hole into the laboratory's flank. Graylee watches the destruction with a sweat drop. That was definitely overkill. Stepping through the smoking rubble, the group enters the facility. But Gray freezes. Inside one of the cells, heavy chains hang ominously from the wall. Through the iron bars, the gruesome reality of the experiment stares back at them. It is a nightmare made real. The young man grimaces. There is no need to hunt for evidence. The atrocity is right before their eyes. Bella trembles, shaken to her core by the terrible scene. Professor Ariel analyzes the magical residue. She detects traces of 14 distinct forbidden spells woven into the illegal experiments. They push deeper into the darkness. In a cavernous room, Gray spots a sinister structure, a summoning altar. The young woman panics. Should they rescue the survivors? But Gray warns her to stay focused. Varian could return at any second. Suddenly, a chill runs down his spine. He senses a presence. A voice drips from the shadows, asking if they were looking for him. Professor Ariel's eyes widen. What about the conference? But it is too late. Varian Bradley steps into the light. The group recoils in shock. Varian smirks, revealing that he sent a body double to the event. He had far more important work to attend to here. Ariel demands answers about his twisted research. Varian simply nods, confirming that fresh materials have arrived. He mentions wanting to use them immediately. His gaze locks onto the intruders. Professor Varian declares a sudden, chilling change of plans. The three brace for combat. Varian watches them through the cold reflection of his glasses, noting that he needed subjects with significantly higher magical potential. Varian admits he is impressed they found his hideout, but he correctly deduces that they kept this discovery to themselves. His smile widens. That means if they were to suddenly vanish tonight, no one would ever suspect him. The student questions his sanity, but Varian Bradley dismisses morality. Their sacrifice will expand the very limits of magic itself. With a twisted grin, he states that since he can't let them leave alive, he will ensure their bodies are put to magnificent use. Boom! A sudden explosion roars toward Varian. The attack slams into the hallway with devastating force. It is Bella Albright. She grips her staff, smoke rising from the tip, having fired the first shot, while Professor Ariel watches in silent approval. As the choking dust finally settles, Varian Bradley gazes upon the aftermath of the destruction. He finds the sheer display of raw power absolute perfection. Turning his cold gaze to the group, he repeats the sentiment, his voice dripping with twisted admiration. Truly magnificent. Dark energy begins to coil around Varian like a living shroud. He sneers, noting that Professor Ariel, the Divine Eye, is still in peak fighting form, and the special admission student, he possesses talent that defies all logic, but curiosity gets the better of him. Varian decides it is time to inspect the Divine Eye's other little recruits up close. He looms over them from a distance, his voice booming down the corridor. He questions the audacity of a mere student daring to raise a hand against a professor. Bella Albright spits back her answer without fear. Better to fight and fail than to accept defeat on her knees, even if her chance at victory has already slipped away. Professor Ariel instantly orders a retreat. They have the evidence they need. The Academy can deal with this monster now. But Varian just laughs. Did they really think he would let them walk away alive? Power explodes from him, sending a devastating wave of energy surging straight for Bella. In a heartbeat, Professor Ariel steps into the line of fire, raising a shimmering barrier to intercept the blow. Professor Carlo screams her name in terror from behind, but Varian Bradley mocks their hope. It is useless. This is the ultimate fruit of his dark research, the flame of gluttony. This is no ordinary fire. It is a voracious beast that devours defensive magic, turning the opponent's very protection into fuel for its own destruction. Ariel watches in horror as Varian smirks. The spell has only one flaw. It costs a fortune in rare materials to conjure. The professor's barrier begins to crack under the pressure. With a sickening sound, her defense shatters completely. The impact sends her flying backward, helpless against the force. But just as the flames advance, a new layer of defensive magic erupts. Bella Albright plants her feet, taking a stand to shield the group from annihilation. Ariel shouts through the chaos. Bella must take the spell memory bag to Gray immediately. If Heathcote Longfellow sees the evidence within, he will know exactly what must be done. Bella ignores the command to run. She stomps her foot against the stone floor, shaking the very ground. A massive spherical barrier expands outward, sealing everyone safe from Varian's assault. Professor Ariel screams in disbelief. What is she doing? She urges Bella to run while she still can, but Bella stands firm. The professor's barrier was failing, so she will handle this situation herself. Ariel desperately reminds her of their promise to put her own life first. Varian's magic is absolute. It cannot be stopped by mere defensive spells. As the last remnants of the professor's shield shatter, Bella simply smiles. It is all right. Her magic surges forward, clashing directly against Varian's devastating attack. She speaks with calm authority. His spell is not invincible. It simply requires a completely different species of defensive magic to counter. Varian Bradley freezes, his arrogance replaced by shock. The theory to nullify his magic was a secret known only to his inner circle. He roars, demanding to know how she possesses this forbidden knowledge. Bella replies coolly. Someone recently taught her a revolutionary new theory. And with that knowledge, countering him becomes child's play. Varian loses his composure. Who taught her? He screams, demanding the traitor's name in exchange for a quick, painless death. The young mage tilts her head, a playful smile on her lips. Does he really want to know? She winks. It is a secret. In her mind, Bella flashes back to Gray Lee. Even though he is merely a student in the swordsmanship course, his formula to nullify Varian's complex spell was flawless. Varian realizes she will never talk. He sighs, resigning himself to total destruction. He raises his hand, revealing a massive, pulsating crystal. He commands the flames to consume them all. With a savage grip, he crushes the crystal. A torrent of energy screams forth, filled with wailing spectral forms surging toward them. The attack tears through the corridor with blinding speed. The chaotic energy condenses, twisting into a dark, devouring vortex. Varian unleashes the full might of the magic. Gray shouts, asking if Bella Albright can hold on. She yells back a yes, claiming the barrier is stable, but a flicker of hesitation crosses her face. Varian Bradley laughs at her struggle. He taunts her, pointing out the obvious: her mana reserves will run dry in less than a minute. Bella grits her teeth. She calls out to Professor Ariel to attack while she holds the line. The professor nods, understanding the desperate plan. The professor's eyes dart across the battlefield, analyzing the onslaught. There, the flames are thinner at a single point. She can project her mana through that gap. Her hand phases through the safety of the barrier, crackling with raw electricity. Now exposed to the outside, Ariel prepares to unleash her magic. Professor Ariel unleashes a blinding blast of lightning straight at Varian. The spell tears down the corridor at breakneck speed. But then, nothing. It dissipates harmlessly inches from its target. Varian Bradley sneers. Their pathetic counterattack cannot even touch him. Gray Lee realizes the grim truth. The professor's offensive magic is the weakest among the staff. Against the flame of gluttony, her spells are just being absorbed as fuel. A heavy silence falls over them. They have run out of options. Bella Albright's voice trembles. She is running on fumes. Her mana is nearly gone. Ariel turns to her students, her eyes filled with regret. This is exactly why she told them to run. She looks at Gray with deep concern. But the swordsman steps forward, his expression calm. He tells the professor to stand down. He will handle the rest. Bella cries out in confusion. His sword cannot possibly bridge that distance, but Gray just grips his weapon tight. It is fine, he says. He is certain his blade will reach. The professor's eyes widen in panic. She warns him not to do it. Using that forbidden power again could cost him everything. His arm might be destroyed forever. Gray pauses, reflecting on the grim possibility of falling in battle alone. But Gray Lee's resolve hardens. Better to risk one life than for all three of them to die here together. Suddenly, a singular point of light pierces the center of Varian Bradley's chaotic magic. Time seems to slow. Gray's determined reflection appears within a single, suspended drop of liquid. He descends from above like a thunderbolt. His blade slices clean through Varian's spell, advancing with lethal precision for the final strike. The dust settles. Varian Bradley stares into the void where his magic once raged, now silenced. Standing tall amidst the clearing debris, Gray Lee and his allies remain unbroken. Bella Albright stands frozen, her mind struggling to process the impossible spectacle she just witnessed. The tension snaps, Varian's strength evaporates, and his body crashes to the cold floor in total defeat. Even Professor Ariel is left breathless. For the first time, she has witnessed the full, terrifying extent of his dormant power with her own eyes. But the clash was too violent for the structure to hold. The hallway ceiling groans and fractures, sending massive boulders hurtling down toward them like judgment from above. A silhouette touches down with the grace of a feather. Instantly, the falling ruin halts in midair, suspended by shimmering threads of pure energy. That exceeded all my calculations, Ariel admits, masking her awe. She pushes the shock aside and turns to her student. Gray, report. Are you intact? My sword arm. It's numb, he replies, fighting through the dull ache. Yet, his fingers tighten around the hilt. But the blade is still an extension of my will. I can move. The professor nods, a flicker of pride in her gaze. His hellish training was not in vain. The young warrior silently agrees. In the past, this level of exertion would have left him comatose for days. Now, it is merely a sore arm, a testament to how far he has ascended. Gray's mind drifts to those brutal sessions with Heathcote Longfellow, the man who forced him to scrape the bottom of his spiritual reserves. Professor Ariel watches him, her expression unreadable. She steps into his personal space, relief warring with concern. "We survived, but at what cost?" she whispers. "I regret that you were forced to unleash that power." Gray shakes his head. "Don't be. Stopping Varian was my decision," he insists, gratitude in his voice. "Thank you for backing me." Ariel's eyes narrow with seriousness. "Promise me, Gray, do not summon that power again for some time." Her voice drops to a chilling warning. "If you push it further, the damage to your soul will be irreversible." Gray stares back, the weight of her words settling in. Silence stretches between them before he lowers his head. "I'm sorry, but the moment is shattered by Bella. That wasn't just magic, was it?" Her voice trembles. "No ordinary spellcaster could generate that kind of devastating pressure. It defies the laws of magic." "My apologies, Miss Albright." Ariel interrupts, her tone sharp. "But you must cease this line of inquiry immediately." "Why?" Bella challenges, but Ariel is already weaving a spell in her palm. The mana crackles ominously. "Because, if you cannot vow silence," Ariel states coldly, "I will be forced to wipe these memories from your mind permanently." Bella pales, realizing the professor is not bluffing. "I'll be quiet." Should we sign a soul contract?" Ariel nods. "A wise choice. Prepare the seal." The magical pact is forged in light, binding Bella's tongue. The deed done, Ariel shifts gears. "Now, what is our next move?" Gray gestures to the unconscious victims. "We secure the civilians first. They appear to be trapped in a magical stasis. They are stable, but they need the Academy's healers," Ariel assesses. She sweeps her hand, casting a barrier that envelops the slumbering prisoners in a protective dome. The shimmering shield locks into place, ensuring no external force can harm them, while the team presses forward. With the innocents safe, Ariel turns her gaze to the facility itself. "This place," she mutters, disgust coloring her tone. "It is pure madness." Her magical sight peels back the layers of reality, revealing the grotesque truth. Illegal experiments. Forbidden alchemy, designed to synthesize living catalysts. They were twisting human lives, she realizes with horror, using them as fuel to artificially amplify magical potential. "But the Liquidator isn't here," she notes, scanning the room. "They must have moved it." Graylee frowns. Something feels terribly wrong. This location. In his previous life, this was ground zero, the epicenter of the calamity that claimed thousands. He remembers the purple miasma that clawed its way up from the earth. Ariel catches the shadow passing over his face. "Gray, you've gone pale. What do you see?" Bella whispers his name, the gravity of their situation finally sinking in. Gray's eyes drift downward, piercing through the floor. Could it be beneath us? Secret passages leading deeper, he theorizes. The true nightmare might be buried underground. Ariel pauses, weighing his intuition against logic. She sweeps the floor with her sensory magic. "I detect no physical doors," she reports, but she refuses to give up, focusing her monocyte with piercing intensity. "Wait." Her eyes snap open. She strides purposefully toward the unconscious form of Varian Bradley. Kneeling where the defeated rival fell, she touches the stone. "It's faint, but undeniable," she whispers. "Residual traces of short-range teleportation magic. The coordinates are locked. 300 meters straight down." She calculates. "There is a void there." Gray looks at her. "Can we breach that depth?" "I can construct a gate," Ariel confirms with a confident smirk. "Shall we take the plunge?" She snaps her fingers, sparking raw mana into existence. An intricate magic circle blazes to life on the floor, its runes expanding to encompass the entire party. "If I am wrong, we materialize inside solid rock," she jokes darkly. "Hold on." The circle erupts in a blinding pillar of light. The world shifts. As their vision clears, they look down, and their breath catches in their throats. Beneath the earth lies a secret. A massive, sprawling metropolis. Professor Ariel is rarely rattled, but her eyes go wide. A subterranean city, hiding directly under the Academy? Impossible. Bella clutches her chest. "The ether," she gasps. "It's overwhelming. It's flooding from everywhere, but especially there." Her trembling finger points to the heart of the underground city, a colossal, circular fortress. Ariel shakes her head. "No, Bella, that isn't just ether. It is an ancient, malignant pressure, a power scale that dwarfs anything recorded in history." Graylee steps forward, his suspicion hardening into certainty. "Is it times that asterisk?" The professor's face is grim. "Yes." Emanating from that central spire, is the unbridled power of the Liquidator. Stealing their resolve, the group descends into the silent city, marching straight toward the eye of the storm. They breach the entrance, only to be met by a final obstacle. At the end of the cavernous hall stands a massive, sealed door guarding the secrets that could destroy the world. Ariel confirmed that the energy signature was undeniably radiating from that location, yet she frowned at the absence of the Liquidator. With a steady hand, she reached out to the heavy blast door. Bella voiced her hesitation, asking if tampering with such forces was wise, but the professor merely scoffed and told her to calm down. Ariel pushed the door ajar, revealing that the metal slab itself held zero magical potency. Bella Albright realized the truth immediately. The imposing door had been placed there solely as a ceremonial symbol for the ritual. Ariel nodded in agreement, explaining that the gateway was a decoy. She gestured to the humming machinery surrounding them, revealing that the true source of the calamity lay within the magical apparatus itself. Deep inside one of the mechanical cores, a sinister energy began to coalesce. Suddenly, the entire facility roared to life, and the group could only watch from a distance as the system fully awakened. Gray asked sharply what was unfolding, his voice tense as he questioned if the enemy was attempting to summon the Liquidator right then and there. Bella cried out that the mana density was too volatile, and begged to shut it down, but Ariel halted her. Her foresight ability confirmed that this facility lacked the capacity to actually summon the monster. Before they could react further, the massive blast door ahead began to fracture under the immense pressure. Graylee shouted that the very fabric of space was being torn asunder. Bella screamed for the professor as the energy from the machines spiked, shattering the door into dust. Gray and Bella stood frozen, their eyes wide with confusion and terror as the chaotic scene unfolded before them. Professor Ariel remained unshakable, declaring that she had already anticipated this outcome. The energy within the central device was beginning to stabilize. She explained that these machines were not designed to summon the Liquidator, but to tear open a rift to its dimension. A vile substance began to pool on the ceiling, channeling the dark power leaking through the void. Ariel's expression darkened as she revealed the fuel source. The core used to crystallize this overwhelming power was nothing less than raw life energy. She estimated that the souls of at least 10 individuals had been consumed to fuel this reaction. It became horrifyingly clear that the prisoners they saw upstairs were mere cattle for this slaughter. Bella trembled, asking why anyone would commit such atrocities for power, but the professor simply asked if she had been blind during the battle. The professor referred to the devastating black flame that Varian had wielded during their fight. She explained that the crystal enhancing that flame was merely a prototype. It was exactly what this catalyst would become once the process was complete. However, she warned that the final catalyst would not be limited to mere fire. If the enemy managed to mass-produce these items, the destruction they could unleash would be limitless. Ariel then narrowed her eyes, noticing that the fractures in reality around the doorframe were beginning to mend themselves. Gray wondered aloud if Varian had not intended to summon the Liquidator after all. The professor replied that she could not be certain if he didn't try, or if he simply lacked the strength to succeed. She concluded that the spatial warping equipment had been pushed to its absolute critical limit. This unstable rift was likely the extent of their current capabilities. Bella Albright gazed at the machinery in awe, commenting that the apparatus was priceless. She had never witnessed spatial warping magic of such high precision and power. Professor Ariel agreed, adding that constructing just one of these devices would bankrupt a small nation. She noted that only one organization in existence possessed the resources to operate 8 of them. Bella suggested it might be the work of the Discar Empire, but Ariel immediately shot down the theory. She explained that while the Empire was the largest nation on the continent, they lacked the advanced magical research infrastructure required to engineer such a marvel. Bella asked desperately who else it could be, before the realization struck her. It had to be an organization whose magical knowledge far surpassed even that of the Imperial Court. Gray Lee's voice cut through the tension as he named the only possibility, the World Union Academy. The accusation left Bella completely paralyzed with shock. Ariel confirmed Gray's suspicion, stating that no other research body possessed the astronomical budget and scale for this project. A heavy silence descended upon the group as the weight of the revelation crushed down on them. The young woman stammered, unable to accept that the Academy, an institution sworn to defend the world against threats, could be the architect of this nightmare. The professor sympathized with her denial, but reinforced the cold, hard truth. There was simply no other group on the planet capable of such a feat. Gray argued that this corruption didn't necessarily mean the entire Academy was their enemy. The majority of the students and staff might still be innocent. He recalled the timeline before the reset, remembering how the Academy's main forces stood on the front lines of the apocalypse. After witnessing that future, he refused to believe the institution itself was an enemy of humanity. Professor Ariel nodded slowly, agreeing that his assessment was likely accurate. She believed that the vast majority of the Academy operated with the intention of saving humanity and would never sanction experiments with such catastrophic costs. However, the Academy was a labyrinth of countless researchers and isolated facilities. It was highly probable that almost no one in this world knew the full scope of what was happening in the shadows. The mental image of the Grand Hall flashed through their minds, reinforcing just how vast and compartmentalized the Academy truly was. Ariel added that whoever was pulling Varian's strings possessed immense influence. Varian could never have orchestrated a conspiracy of this magnitude alone. Bella Albright asked quietly if this meant they could never fully trust the Academy again. The professor revealed she had been observing the institution from the inside for decades. She confirmed their fears. The World Union Academy was definitely not an organization that earned the luxury of blind trust. The professor surmised that even the people conducting these twisted experiments likely did not see themselves as villains. They had probably convinced themselves that these sacrifices were necessary, deluding themselves into believing it was all for the greater good of mankind. The truth remained buried in darkness. Gray Lee asked if there were any leads on the mastermind, but Ariel shook her head. There were no communication devices in the facility. She explained that the creator was meticulous, leaving not even a trace of magical residue on the equipment, making the hunt for clues nearly impossible. Ariel then hesitated, a shadow crossing her face as if she were weighing whether to speak her next thought. Disaster strikes without warning. A device detonates right behind Bella Albright. Gray Lee freezes as the world around him erupts into chaos. It is not just one explosion. The entire hall triggers in a catastrophic chain reaction of destruction. Professor Ariel's sharp eyes scan the flames. She realizes these are fail-safes designed to erase all evidence. But why wait until Varian was defeated to destroy the place? Bella cuts through the analysis with panic in her voice. Forget the theories. We need to move now before we're buried. Yet, the professor remains terrifyingly calm amidst the inferno. Relax, she soothes them. These are merely magical explosives. Her hand touches the cold floor, channeling mana. Did you think the professors of the World Union Academy were weak? Ariel smiles with absolute confidence. We will not fall here. Energy surges. A massive, intricate magic circle blazes to life beneath their feet, shielding the group. The ceiling begins to crumble. Ariel commands them to stay within the circle as she focuses her overwhelming power to hold back the collapse. The inferno swallows the hall, yet inside the barrier, they remain untouched. When the dust settles, the entire building is gone, leaving only their platform standing in the ruins. In the blink of an eye, the scenery shifts. Under the pale moonlight, the group appears on the outskirts of the compound. The teleportation spell was a success. Ariel confirms that every single captive was transported to safety alongside them. Gray lets out a breath he was holding, his heart racing. I thought we were dead. That was far too close for comfort. Ariel smirks, dusting herself off. The teleport was sluggish, because of the extra baggage. She gestures to the recovered tech. But securing this equipment made the risk worth it. Her eyes gleam with triumph. With these devices in hand, the Academy can no longer turn a blind eye to what is happening. Later, they stand before the ornate doors of authority. They receive word that the survivors are recovering in the medical wing. It is time to face the music. They stand before Ororodram Alexandro, the director of the World Union Academy. He bows his head, thanking them for stopping Varian's vile experiments. His gaze shifts to the confiscated items. He demands to know everything about the magic engines Varian possessed. Ororodram slides a document across the desk. The revelation is staggering. A single one of these engines is worth more than a nation's entire budget. Ariel is stunned. How did Varian gather 8 of them on his own? The director's expression darkens. He didn't. This is stolen property. The truth comes out. These were hijacked during a transport mission, Ororodram explains grimly. A heist that cost the lives of 78 elite agents. A heavy silence falls over the room. Ariel suddenly recalls a tragedy from 15 years ago. The pieces of the puzzle are clicking together. The director confirms her fears. That stolen cargo contained these very engines. He looks at them with serious eyes. And I know exactly who is responsible. He drops the name that strikes fear into the underworld. The Reapers. Tell me, have you heard of them? Gray recognizes the name, the world's largest criminal syndicate. Bella's fists tremble with rage. Parasites, she hisses. They always crawl back from the shadows. Her voice cracks with emotion. Bella reveals the heartbreaking truth. Those monsters. They are the ones who murdered my parents. Ororodram sighs, looking weary. We dismantle them, and they rebuild. No one knows where they hide or who leads them. They are ghosts. He drops another statistic. 78% of all fatal crimes are traced back to their influence. The director leans forward. I wouldn't be surprised if their agents are already inside this academy. But without proof, the academy will never lift a finger. Gray is baffled. I don't understand. Even with criminals infiltrating us, the Academy does nothing? Ariel reveals the harsh reality of their world. That is the system now. The Academy accepts anyone with talent. Strength justifies everything. Ororodram agrees solemnly. To the institution, a criminal record means nothing if the power is real. Bella finds the logic disgusting. Criminals should be punished, not trained. I share your anger, the director admits quietly. But my superiors, they have a different philosophy. Bella challenges him. Aren't you the director? Do you not lead this place? He laughs bitterly. I am merely a subordinate. He reveals his weakness. I am the face on the brochures, but my authority is dust. His eyes narrow. Do you want to know who really calls the shots? Bella and Gray stare at him, waiting for the name. But the director gives them advice instead. Get stronger. It is a challenge. Prove your power. Climb the ranks to the core of the Academy. Only then will you be allowed to see the secrets hidden in the dark. Ororodram lowers his voice. I cannot name him, but there is a veteran. One man with enough influence to shape our laws, including the protection of criminals. Gray asks the ultimate question. If we become stronger than this man, can we change the Academy? The director nods slowly. Perhaps. Anything is possible with power. He delivers the final lesson. In this place, strength is the only absolute truth. Gray and Bella clench their fists, a fire igniting in their souls. Ororodram watches them leave with keen interest. He analyzes the battle report in his mind. Ariel could never have defeated Varian alone. He connects the dots. The victory belongs to one of those two students. A monster is hiding in plain sight. He smiles, sensing the rise of a legend. Ariel's divine eye hasn't dulled. I cannot wait to see what kind of monster she is raising. Later, Gray walks down the lonely corridor. The weight of the world settles on his shoulders. He looks at the mysterious mark on his wrist and clenches his fist. Power rules this academy. To destroy the darkness, I must become the strongest existence of all. First things first. Survival requires power. He resolves to grind until his strength is absolute. Ambush. A blur of motion rushes him. Before Gray can process the threat, a heavy boot crashes into his chest with bone-rattling force. He skids across the polished tiles, shoes screeching. Instinct takes over. He stabilizes instantly, raising a defensive guard. The assailant sneers, calling him tougher than a cockroach. What is your malfunction? Gray demands. The response is pure, unadulterated hostility. The thug accuses Gray of strutting around like a king. Trash like you, he spits. Doesn't belong in these hallowed halls. You're a stain on the academy. Gray stares him down, ice in his veins. You looking for a death wish? It is the first time someone has had the guts to strike him openly in the corridor. I'd love to smash you, the bully growls, raising a fist. But his eyes dart away. Professor Ariel has materialized like a phantom. Great. Reject number 2, the student mutters. He smirks, catch you later, and turns his back on them with zero respect. He tosses a mock apology over his shoulder as he retreats. Too many eyes watching today. Lucky you, freak. Then, a wicked grin splits his face. I'll send a replacement soon. He drops a name that chills the air. Varian. Professor Ariel rushes over, concern etched on her face. Report. Gray shrugs it off. Just a pest claiming Divine Eye users shouldn't walk on the same floor as him. She sighs, scanning him. No blood, no steel drawn. Without a weapon or visible injury, my hands are tied by Academy law. Then, a dangerous glint enters her eyes. Why not chase him down and neutralize the threat? Gray blinks, stunned. Is that permitted? Officially? Never. Ariel adjusts her glasses. But my vision has been failing lately. I might miss a beatdown happening right under my nose. Gray shakes his head. Not worth the energy. Ariel looks disappointed by his restraint. She wanted to see him snap. Is the harassment always this severe? She presses. Usually just words, Gray admits. Today was the first time they actually threw hands. Mockery? She seems skeptical that mere insults are the extent of the brewing hatred. She laments her lack of power to protect them fully. Gray stops her. Don't apologize. Without you, I'd still be on the outside looking in. We'll prove them wrong, he vows. Me, Bella, all of us. The Divine Eye program will shine because you saw our potential. Elsewhere, sparks fly. Amy White steals her resolve while Bella Albright weaves complex incantations. Jacob Bloomfield launches his assault. Back in the hall, Ariel falls into a heavy, contemplative silence. Thank you, she whispers. Then, her tone sharpens. But don't play the victim. You are the ace of the Divine Eye group. My greatest hope. The others will be elites, she declares. But you? She looks right through him. I believe you have the potential to transcend humanity itself. No pressure, right? Gray quips. The professor doesn't laugh. Her gaze is piercing, weighing his soul. His mind drifts to the shadows. The puppet master behind Varian. They haven't given up on summoning the Liquidator. In the previous timeline, that monster was invincible. That is why he came back, to rewrite the ending and slaughter the beast. The fate of this entire world rests on his shoulders. Scene shift. The Grand Colosseum looms over the city, a monument to violence. Combat class. The instructor's voice booms. Live steel today. He points to the board. Find your partners. No holding back. Gray Lee scans the list. He needs to be sharp. Focus is everything. One slip up, and the haters will tear the Divine Eye program apart. He has to match the regulars, blow for blow, to silence the critics. He steels himself. Then he sees it. His opponent, Leon Hart Appius, the prodigy, top of the fencing course, the strongest first-year monster in the entire academy. Balanced matchmaking, the instructor claims, lying through his teeth. Fight as if your lives depend on it. Balanced? Gray almost laughs. A charity case versus the #1 seed? It's a setup. This guy definitely hates the special admits. After the hallway incident, he's probably itching to crush Gray into the dirt legally. A voice rumbles from behind, heavy with intensity. Well met. Leon Hart is beaming. Destiny pairs us together. I climb to the top just for this honor. To cross blades with Lord Gray. He steps into Gray's personal space, aura blazing. I have trained harder than anyone. Witness my true swordsmanship. Gray sweats. That smile isn't friendship, it's bloodlust. The guy is ecstatic about the chance to finally beat him to a pulp in an official match. Center stage. The arena holds its breath. The instructor raises a hand. Combatants, ready? Begin. Leon Hart explodes off the mark. Here I come. Steel meets steel with a deafening clang as Gray intercepts the first strike. Sparks shower them. The impact is heavy, too heavy. Gray grinds his heels into the dirt, but he's sliding backward from the sheer pressure. Leon Hart doesn't let up. He rechambers and slashes a blur of violence. Gray barely deflects the killing blow. He grips his hilt with both hands, muscles screaming against the kinetic force. Incredible. Leon Hart laughs maniacally. You fight like a beast, not a reject. He unleashes a storm of slashes, forcing Gray into a desperate defense. Gray gritted his teeth. Even with 2 hands on the hilt, he couldn't match the raw power crashing down on him. He realized the truth instantly. Leon Hart's swordsmanship was standard, yes, but it was textbook perfection, honed to a terrifying edge. The swordsman stepped closer, his pressure immense. Gray realized with a chill for a rookie in his first life, this guy was a monster. Steel clashed across the arena as other students sparred, but all eyes drifted to them. He's actually keeping up with Leon Hart? That's insane. I could do this all day. Leon Hart smirked, barely sweating. But Gray's lungs were already burning. He knew the reality. Without Professor Heathcote's hellish training, he would have kissed the dirt minutes ago. Asterisk. Why isn't he tired? Asterisk. Gray panicked. His own stamina was draining fast. He had to end this right now. Asterisk. Fight like it's real. Asterisk. The professor's words echoed in his mind. Gray's expression shifted from desperate to cold. Leon Hart raised his blade for the finishing blow. Gray leaned back, barely dodging death, and planted a hand on the floor for balance. Confusion flashed on Leon Hart's face. Capitalizing on the low stance, Gray launched a vicious strike at his opponent's legs. Leon Hart stumbled, gravity betraying him mid-air. He fell, bewildered. Gray watched him from the ground like a predator. Realization hit Leon Hart hard. This wasn't a sport, it was war. He tightened his grip, pride refusing to let him yield. I cannot lose, but in the blink of an eye, it was over. Gray stood above him, the cold steel of his blade hovering inches from Leon Hart's face. The duel was decided. Gray lowered his weapon and extended a hand. Let's call it a draw. Leon Hart took the hand but shook his head grimly. No, that wasn't a draw. In that final second, I froze. The truth was undeniable. Gray could have ended the fight decisively if he had wanted to take the kill shot. Leon Hart looked down. Because it was a mock battle, I aimed for a vulnerable spot instead of a lethal one. Am I wrong? Gray's voice was firm. Even with protection spells, aiming for vital points in practice is madness. You did the right thing. Leon Hart sighed, the tension leaving his shoulders. That still means I lost. Thank you, he said earnestly. I finally understand. Real combat is a different beast entirely from swordsmanship. Gray shrugged. A bit dirty for a fencing class, though. But Leon Hart grinned. The instructor said, time's real combat. Asterisk. In a fight for survival, there are no wrong tactics. Passion ignited in the noble's eyes. He stepped forward. One more round. Right now. Asterisk. Again? Asterisk. Gray panicked internally. Asterisk. I only won by catching him off guard. In a head-on clash, his technique would crush me. Asterisk. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the air. Hold it right there. A student stormed over, face twisted in annoyance. Combat training or not, nobody said you could use cheap tricks like kicking. He sneered at Gray. How did a special admission charity case get paired with the top student? Don't get cocky, trash. Gray stared blankly. Asterisk. I didn't exactly pick the teams, genius. Asterisk. But Leon Hart stepped in, radiating hostility. The professor chose him because he's the only one worthy. Stay out of this. Professor Heathcote arrived, his presence heavy. I made the pairs based on similar overall combat power. He looked around the silent arena. Gray is the only student here capable of facing Leon Hart. The professor smirked at the complainer. Don't believe me? Beat Gray, and you can take his spot. The student cracked his knuckles. Fine by me. I beat the examiner to get in here, he boasted. Don't compare me to someone who barely scraped by. Leon Hart shook his head. Asterisk. He's judging the book by its cover. Just like I did. Asterisk. Gray watched calmly. Asterisk. Actually, this is perfect. A chance for my partner's strength to be recognized by everyone. Asterisk. But Leon Hart turned to the challenger, eyes dark. Asterisk. More importantly, this fool interrupted my training time with Lord Gray. Asterisk. You've wasted my time, Leon Hart growled. For that alone, you deserve a harsh lesson. The student flinched at the killing intent. The professor intervened. If you hate real combat so much, we'll stick to swords only. Gray, do you accept? Gray assessed his new enemy. Asterisk. I don't know his style, but if he passed the regular exams, he's no pushover. Asterisk. Asterisk. He has the stamina and the build. My crash course training can't beat years of proper physical conditioning. Asterisk. Gray scratched his head, feigning hesitation. I'm not exactly confident in my abilities. Any penalty if I lose? The professor grinned wolfishly. Just a bruised ego, but listen well, do not go easy on each other. Gray nodded, his grip tightening on the hilt. The atmosphere grew heavy. Begin. The signal dropped, and the student launched himself like a cannonball. Know your place, he roared, swinging wild to crush the weakling. Gray caught the strike, steel ringing out. Asterisk. Wait. What? Asterisk. Gray frowned. The blades locked. Then, with a sudden explosion of force, a figure was sent flying backward. The challenger freezes in shock. Meanwhile, Gray stares at his own hand. That hit felt incredibly light. Is his power this weak, or is he just that strong? Refusing to accept it, the student roars and charges back in. Gray frowns. Is this guy holding back? With a single, fluid motion, he strips the weapon from his opponent's grasp. The student hits the dirt hard, completely overwhelmed. The professor steps in immediately. The duel is over. Gray looms over him, genuinely confused. He asks if he is okay. In his mind, that attack was slow enough for anyone to dodge. But the fallen student grits his teeth. It was just luck, a cheap shot. He scrambles to his feet, pride wounded, and demands one more round. The professor sighs but allows it. Go until you are satisfied. Again and again, the student throws himself at Gray. Hours pass until the sky clears above the arena. Gray crouches beside the battered challenger. He asks one more time if he is all right. The boy opens his mouth to speak. Gasping for air, he lies and claims he is fine. But the professor has seen enough. He orders the match finished and calls for a medic to haul the student away. The instructor turns to the class with a major announcement. The representatives for this year are Gray and Leon. Does anyone dare to object? Gray blinks, totally lost. What does being a representative even mean? Leon Hart steps up to explain. It is the ultimate clash where the best rookies face the second-year champion. The professor nods solemnly. It is time for the legendary Interyear battle. He scans the crowd, dropping a heavy truth. The first years have suffered defeat 35 times in a row. But this year, the instructor hints that destiny might finally change. Gray frowns at the number. 35 consecutive losses? Is the power gap between grades really that insurmountable? The professor does not sugarcoat it. 1 year at this academy creates a massive divide in strength. Losing is not just common, it is expected. He emphasizes that merely surviving the fight brings honor. Actually winning, that would be recorded in history as nothing short of a miracle. He places a heavy hand on Gray's shoulder. No pressure, just do your best. With that, the class is dismissed. Walking away, Gray shrugs it off. This inter-year battle sounds like a casual exhibition match to him. However, as a wielder of the special divine eye, his perspective shifts. This is the perfect stage to prove his worth. Determination burns in his eyes. It is time to train like never before. Meanwhile, in the dim light of the faculty meeting room, tension rises. The final agenda item belongs to Professor Boudra. Professor Ariel narrows her eyes, ready to listen. Boudra, a heavyweight from the magic department, drops a bombshell. He formally proposes the immediate expulsion of the Divine Eye student, Amy White. Ariel shoots back instantly. She is responsible for those students, but Boudra smirks. That, exactly, is the problem. He lays out the cold facts. Amy White failed her third-year advancement exam. The only reason she is still here is her protected status as a special admission. Budra spreads his hands in mock confusion. How is that fair? Every other student who failed was kicked out without mercy. Ariel fights for her student. She insists Amy is developing world-class combat potential, but a volatile reaction in her body seals away her true power. A scoff echoes through the room. The professor rolls his eyes. That side effect excuse makes a failure sound like a hidden prodigy. He demands to know how long she intends to keep peddling this fantasy. Ariel slams her hand down. It is the truth. Amy could master her power any day now. But if they push her out, that potential dies forever. Another faculty member cuts in sharply. She has used that same excuse for years. Is her plan to shelter a substandard student until the end of time? Ariel stands her ground. The very purpose of this academy is to nurture talent, not discard it. Expelling a gifted child because they do not fit the mold is a betrayal of their duty. Budra sneers at her choice of words. Talent? He admits the special picks were legends in the past. But this current generation? They are nothing but a crop of failures. Ariel bites her lip. The faces of Amy White, Bella Albright, and Jacob Bloomfield flash through her mind. Another voice chimes in with a lethal suggestion. The great divine eye has lost its insight. Perhaps it is time to abolish the program entirely. Ariel freezes, stunned. Abolition? What are they saying? The professor reminds her of the bylaws. The founding council created it, but a majority faculty vote can destroy it. A colleague nods in agreement. The current batch simply isn't worth keeping. Another piles on. Even Bella Albright's improvement is mediocre at best. Her harmonic capacity is laughably questionable. Ariel opens her mouth to scream in their defense, but she is cut off. The consensus is building. The legends of the past are gone, and this new class is a disappointment. Scornful smiles surround her. The room is thick with disdain. A cold realization hits Ariel. The enemies of the divine eye are everywhere. This is not just an argument. The entire program is on the brink of execution. Budra leans back, confident. The system is a relic. It is outdated. It is time for the academy to evolve and move on. A colleague throws a final taunt. Does she still claim her eye for talent is superior to theirs? Ariel clenches her fist until her knuckles turn white. She wants to scream yes, but she knows that outburst would be fatal. She swallows her rage. She knows these vultures already despise her. Many here only care about the academy's benefit. If she loses her cool, she loses their votes. Defeated, Ariel remains silent. Budra gloats, seeing her submission. Cat, got your tongue? He sneers, telling her that even she must realize she is long past her prime. Another elder chimes in, suggesting it is time for her to retire before her legend turns to ash. One professor sneers, suggesting that if she wants to coddle her favorite pets, she should open her own private school. A colleague mocks the idea as brilliant, claiming she would be lucky to find any fools willing to follow a rotting divine eye. But Ariel stands firm. She declares those kids just need time, and if granted that mercy, they will ascend. She vows to stop their expulsion at any cost. The target shifts. A voice cuts through the room, asking about the divine eye disciples specifically, the one named Gray. Another professor notes the rumors. Gray is a rising star in first-year swordsmanship, already chosen for the Interyear clash. Budra smirks, commenting that the boy does indeed sound very promising. Then the trap is sprung. One suggests they let Gray prove his worth in the arena, and the program's survival will hang on the result of his blood. Professor Ariel freezes. The weight of the proposal crushes down on her. She glances at Professor Heathcote Longfellow, hesitation gripping her heart. She tries to explain, Gray's power is not meant for mock battles. In a true life-or-death duel, he shines. But times, slam, asterisk, a fist hits the table, cutting her off. The professor roars in anger. If a warrior cannot show power in training, they are useless in real war. We all know this truth. Ariel rises. Desperate, you don't understand. His blade walks a different path. Suffocating tension floods the faculty meeting room. A senior elder ends it. The debate is dead. However, he admits there is merit in the test. Seeing the Divine Eye's choice in actual combat is reasonable. They will decide the fate of the class times after times the battle unfolds. Ariel protests in vain. As they exit, the vultures circle, eager for the show. They cannot wait to see the failure. Professor Heathcote Longfellow departs without a word. A ghost in the room. Left alone, Ariel slumps at the table. She whispers apologies to the empty air, cursing her own weakness. Then, Gray's face fills her mind. His power is wrong for sport. He needs time she does not have. She knows her hope is clinging to a fragile thread. Yet, she prays. A silent plea to the heavens. Help these children, these rough diamonds with God-tier potential. Protect their future. The day of reckoning arrives. The inter-year battle begins. The arena roars. Center stage, the announcer bellows the name of the top first-year king, Leon Hart Appas. Next, the second-year queen, Lunal Hartman. And the first-year challenger stepping into the fire, Gray Lee. Finally, the second-year monster, Deborah Ridardo, enters the fray. Gray's eyes narrow. It is times him, times the guy who cornered him in the hallway. Is this really his opponent? The announcer screams. Witness their true power. The stands are packed with faculty. Professor Boudreaux watches like a hawk, waiting for the fall. Leon Hart frowns. Why are so many masters here? Lunal Hartman notes the anomaly last year. Only 3 bothered to show. Luna is puzzled, but Leon Hart sees the truth behind the gathering. He smirks. They are here for Gray. I must say the professors have excellent taste. Lunal wonders if he is always this sharp. A nearby professor nods. Correct. We are here to witness the final breath of the Divine Eye class. Ripples of shock tear through the student section. Gray freezes. Final? What do you mean? A professor sneers. Did no one tell the boy? Professor Boudreaux drops the bomb. The Divine Eye class is abolished. Stunned, Gray looks to Ariel. Is it true? She meets his gaze with heavy silence. The professor muses. In this mental state, the battle might break the boy before it even begins. She takes a breath, steeling her soul. Ariel lies to protect him. Boudreaux is just trying to shake you. Ignore him. Just fight. She falls silent, watching the arena with a pounding heart. Gray locks eyes with his master. He turns forward, eyes hardening. I will do as you say. Boudreaux laughs cruelly. Go ahead. Embarrass yourselves. He thinks it is over. The moment they lose, everyone will see that Ariel's legendary vision has gone blind. Gray's aura flares. He glares at the faculty stand. I cannot let that slide. Boudreaux blinks. What? The boy's voice cuts like ice. Insult me all you want, but dare to speak ill of Professor Ariel's judgment. The professor recoils at the sheer audacity. Boudreaux sneers. What strength did she see in a failure like you? Everyone knows you will lose. Gray smiles darkly. Fine. I will let you watch me prove you wrong. The professor fumes at the arrogance. The announcer interrupts, ordering the fighters to their corners. Ariel appreciates the fire, but dread coils in her stomach. What is Gray planning? Against the top student, his practical skills might have worked. But this? Fate is cruel. He has been matched with the absolute worst opponent imaginable. Ariel reveals a terrifying truth. Bradley hasn't just trained Devil Rattle. He has forged him into a living weapon. His reflexes have been honed to a superhuman edge, faster than the eye can follow. She grimly concludes that this makes him the ultimate predator. For someone like Gray, who relies on ambush tactics, Devil Rattle is the worst possible nightmare to face in the ring. Is he actually planning to use times that times technique? The professor wonders, anxiety tightening her chest. Sensing her gaze, Gray shoots a sharp, silent glare toward the professor's stand. Professor Ariel quickly waves it off, signaling him not to worry about her. But her voice drops to a whisper as she adds a warning. Just don't push yourself past the breaking point. Gray holds his silence for a heartbeat, his expression unreadable. Finally, he gives a curt reply. I know. The tension breaks as the announcer's voice booms, summoning the representatives for the top students' match. He roars to the crowd, explaining the arena's ancient protective barriers. This isn't just sparring. Victory requires fighting with the intent to kill, safe within the magic's embrace. The goal is simple but brutal. Trigger the opponent's safeguard before yours shatters. It is a battle of pure instinct. Leonhardt and Lunal Hartman step into the spotlight, eyes locked. The crowd goes wild as the announcer screams for the Interyear battle to begin. The air crackles with anticipation. Leonhardt explodes off the starting line like a cannonball. Here I come, he roars. Lunal stands like a fortress, calm and waiting. Show me everything you've got. Steel shrieks against steel in a blinding exchange of blows. The second-year student is forced to take a step back, barely blocking a crushing strike from above. But Lunal's counter is lightning fast, throwing Leonhardt completely off balance. The first year slams a hand into the dirt, fighting desperately to stay upright. Lunal lands a clean hit. Gritting his teeth, Leonhardt realizes the bitter truth. He cannot mimic Gray's fighting style. He has to find his own way. Not bad, Lunal admits, a smirk playing on his lips. You are stronger than I was as a first year, but you need to pick up the pace. Keep up if you can, Lunal taunts. Sparks fly as they trade another flurry of strikes. But the gap in experience is undeniable. The first year is driven back. Asterisk crack. Asterisk Leonhardt's protective magic shatters into light. Lunal winds up for the finisher, but the announcer's voice cuts through the air. That is enough. Lunal is declared the victor. The killing intent vanishes instantly, and the two warriors bow, thanking each other for a worthy bout. Now, the main event calls. The challengers match. Leonhardt limps past Gray, clapping a hand on his shoulder. Good luck. Gray nods his thanks, his eyes focused forward. The young man takes a deep breath. He talked a big game earlier. Now, he has to back it up with blood and steel. Memories of a ruined future flash through his mind. He has faced demons and calamities far worse than this before his regression. Compared to the hell he crawled back from, this fight is within his grasp. Across the arena, a metallic screech sets teeth on edge. The tip of Devil Rattle's blade drags along the stone floor, hungry for battle.